Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto dominates Chunin exams part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Konohagaku no Sato. Endless Chasm. 0900 HRS. Throughout the course of history, the saying that you would witness your life flash before your eyes as you were about to die was rather well known. Apparently nobody had informed the screaming blonde-haired boy of this saying, as the only thoughts going through his head as he plummeted to his death were along the lines of, "Oh Kami! I am going to die. I haven't even gotten Sakura-chan to go on a date with me. I still haven't kicked Sasuke team's ass in a fair match. I'm going to kill that toad-humping pervert." Having stopped screaming as it was just a waste of breath, the boy placed his hands together in a hand seal and closed his eyes in a feeble attempt to focus as he tumbled in freefall towards the bottom of the chasm. A faint blue aura glowed around him as sweat started to bead around his forehead, eyes twitching as he tried to concentrate on drawing out more of his inner power known as chakra. Underneath his obscenely bright orange jacket, an intricate seal fizzled to life upon his stomach as it pulsed slightly. Uzumaki Naruto was in a dire situation, a situation he was in due to his insane new mentor kicking him off the edge of a cliff and into Konoha's deepest chasm. Now that he put some thought into it, maybe the white-haired pervert was just another villager that hated him. Using his desperation for a proper mentor to lower his guard, then now succeeded in disposing of him without any trace left behind. To make matters worse, the Kyubi no Yoko which was sealed inside him at birth was also refusing to release any of its chakra to the blonde. He could feel the tears building up in his eyes as he realized that this would probably be the end of his life. He would never get to fulfill his dream of becoming the most powerful Hokage. Before he could contemplate more, his eyes and mouth opened in a silent scream as he rammed into a rock outcropping from the side of the chasm. The impact easily shattering several of his ribs as he bounced off and continued to plummet, only in a heap of pain this time. Fuck, can't stay conscious, Naruto thought, and as if some deity had heard his prayer, unconsciousness took him as he finally collided with the floor of the chasm with a sickening crunch and spray of red viscous liquid. Konohagaku no Sato. Endless Chasm Entrance. 0910. A white-haired man with a rather large stature paced back and forth in front of the massive chasm that lay before him. His face was pale with rivulets of sweat dripping down. He paused for a moment and glanced down the impressive gap in the earth for a few seconds before resuming his pacing, only he was biting his fingernails now too. Kyuso, where is the Gaki? He should have ascended back up the chasm by riding one of the larger toad summons by now. The Kyubi would have surely wanted to preserve its own life. Jiraiya of the Sannin was usually a rather aloof person, which was the total opposite of what he was currently feeling. Several further minutes of pacing later, and the toad sage was hyperventilating as he stared down the chasm while on his knees, eyes desperately searching the dark abyss for some kind of sign. He felt tears stinging the edge of his vision as the horrible realization of what he had just done settled in. He had just killed a child that had not even begun reaching his teen years. Not just any child. He had just murdered the child of the man that he had considered his own son. Naruto! Please answer me! I'm sorry! Naruto! Jiraiya shouted into the chasm, his voice echoing off the walls, but there was no response. I just killed him. I murdered Naruto. Minato. Fuck, I'm so sorry, Minato. Jiraiya let the tears flow unobstructed down his face and into the chasm, tears of guilt, sorrow, repentance, and many other emotions escaping the man in that instance. As the thought settled further into his mind, the white-haired sage found himself considering the act of seppuku, ritual suicide by disembowelment. It sure as hell would not bring his godson back, but at the very least, it would grant him release from this life so that he may not have to face the people that had loved the blonde-haired boy. Yet I can't even do that. Konoha still needs me around. And I still have many regrets that I have not yet settled as well. Fuck. What is Sensei going to say when I tell him? He's probably going to kill me, Jiraiya thought morosely, pulling himself back up to his own feet and beginning a slow trudge back towards the Hokage Tower. Location unknown. 0915. Badump. 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 Darkness was all there was to see, floating in an endless void of nothingness. He could discern the sound of his own heartbeat amidst the silence, a slow rhythmic thumping that echoed inside his head. Where was he? What happened? How did he end up in this situation? Questions upon questions piled up inside his head before a sudden moment of clarity struck him. The Chunin exams. I was training for the finals. That man, he pushed me down into the hole just like the rest. Nobody will acknowledge me. Naruto seemed to shrink in upon himself at these thoughts, curling up into a fetal position as his body floating through the void. Nobody wants me. Kakashi pawned me off to a random instructor. Sakura thinks I am an annoyance, she would never go out with me. Sasuke thinks that I'm holding him back, that I'm just a dope. Even the Kyuubi would rather die than continue existing inside me. I am unwanted. Feeling a sudden overwhelming urge to sleep, he decided to give in as his eyelids fluttered shut and his breathing started to even out and slow down. Just as he was about to surrender himself to the void, a strange sensation surrounded his body in a way that intrigued him enough to crack his eyes open again. Wrapped around his form and drifting in the void around him were wisps of translucent bright blue energy that seemed to flow like water. Greetings, young one. The voice had the same properties as the energy, liquid-like, velvety, and seemed to just flow into his head. Hello? Is someone else here? We are here, yet at the same time we are not. We are everywhere, yet we are nowhere. Okay? So what are you doing here, voice-san? The same reason you are, young one. And that is? To find a purpose. This seemed to stun the blonde-haired boy for a moment, not expecting to find another kindred soul in the desolate empty void that he had found himself in. How long have you been here? Did you manage to find your purpose? We have been waiting for a long time, too long for any of your kind to comprehend. We seek purpose, yet nobody could hear our calls until now. Does that mean you have found your purpose? What is it? You are our purpose. Seeing the confused expression that had appeared on the boy, the voice decided to elaborate. Our calls have always carried on unheard, but you heard us, you can feel us. What are you? We go by many names. The One, Mother Nature, Fate, Destiny. These are all names that people use to describe us. However, we are known just as the Force. We are the force that drives this planet and its diverse forms of life. We are the force that holds everything together, and we are the force that binds people together. As the voice explained, though the explanation was vague and uninformative, Naruto realized that he somehow suddenly knew what the voice was talking about. He could feel what the voice was talking about. He could feel the energy flowing over his form. He could also feel the energy flowing through his form as it granted him clarity, and the feeling that he could accomplish anything. What am I supposed to do? The last thing I remembered is an intense feeling of pain as I fell to my death. I don't even know how I got here. Rest assured that it is not yet your time to join us, young one. Your tenant is to thank for that. Your body is currently being healed by the energy of the sealed entity. Kyuubi? The Kyuubi is healing me? I thought that it wanted me to die. I cannot answer on behalf of Kyuubi. That answer is something you will have to seek on your own. However, I can grant you an answer to your original question. My power is for you to accomplish what you will, be it for good or evil. I am neither light nor dark. How you wield me is entirely up to your own discretion. Naruto stared silently into the dark void as he processed what the voice, the Force, had just told him. He now had a second chance at life, wielding a powerful new kind of energy that nobody before him had possessed before. He could use this newfound power to hurt all who have ever wronged him, or he could use it to make them acknowledge him. I will show them all that I am not a failure. I will prove to them that Uzumaki Naruto is not a failure. If that is what you wish, I will instruct you in the ways of the Force. What will I be able to accomplish with this Force power? You will be able to grasp objects with just your mind, focusing the energy into an explosive blast or into a vortex that will pull everything towards you. You will be able to influence the thoughts of weak-willed people, the ability to convert the Force into arcs of lightning that will sear your opponents. That is just the beginning. How am I supposed to train in your ways? Right now we are inside your mind, young one. Your body was heavily damaged by the fall, and even with my assistance, the Kyuubi will take several weeks to fully restore your body to its peak condition. The finals of the Chunin exams are in a month's time. How am I supposed to train for it when my body is still recovering? Right now I have entered you into a meditative trance. It is a special ability that Force users can use. While in a meditative trance, time passes 5 times slower while you are in this trance, so only an hour passes in the outside world for every 5 inside here. During this period, I will instruct you on the basis of Force powers and train you up into a proper Force user. What about food and water? Won't my body die due to a lack of them? That is another feature of a meditative trance. Your metabolism rate slows to a crawl while in the trance. It is almost like you are hibernating during this period. Combined with your tenon healing you, your body will remain in working condition, albeit a little malnourished. Okay, I'm just going to pretend I understood what you just said. In simpler terms, it is like your body will be asleep for the entire month. Oh. So when do we start? Right now. Hokage Office. 0915. Let me get this straight, you thought it would be a good idea to throw Naruto down into the endless chasm just because you wanted him to access the Kyuubi's chakra? You thought that putting him into an uncontrollable life and death situation would cause him to miraculously pull out even an iota of the Kyuubi's chakra? I trusted you, Jiraiya. I trusted you when you gave me your word that you would use this 1-month interval to train Naruto up to become a fine shinobi just like his father was. Instead, you betrayed my trust. You betrayed Naruto's trust. Even worse, you betrayed Minato's trust in you that you would look after his son. Naruto is dead because of you. So potent was the killing intent being emitted from the enraged Sandaime that even his secretary outside the office had fainted, foaming at the mouth, from the pressure being exerted. The Ansatsu Senjutsu Takushibutai, ANBU, members that made up his personal guard were forced to drop the A-rank genjutsu that kept them hidden within the shadows, bracing themselves against the walls as they struggled to catch their breath. However, Jiraiya was forced to keep his silence due to a completely different reason, the reason being the wrinkle-filled hand that was clamped down around his throat like an unbreakable vice. The Sandaime Hokage had his arm held out before him, pinning the white-haired toad Sannin to the wall of his office. Sarutobi Hiruzen was by no means large or imposing. In fact, he had always been on the rather small and lean side. Both of his male students had been taller than him, with Jiraiya being the largest as he held both the height and shoulder width. However, for all the difference in size, Jiraiya felt that he might as well have been the size of an ant as he gazed into the smoldering rage that burned within his teacher's gaze. Not only have you killed a shinobi of our village, the child of a Hokage, but also the Jinchuriki of our village. Do you know what kind of repercussions would befall us should any of the other villages catch wind of this? Hiruzen growled as he spun around and flung his student against the door of his office, breaking it into pieces and sending Jiraiya into the hallway. You're lucky you're more valuable to the village alive than dead, or I would have killed you where you were standing. You are to keep your silence regarding this issue. Now get out of my sight before I do something I regret. Jiraiya scrambled to his feet, hand massaging his throat, and performed a deep bow before disappearing in a gust of wind. The ANBU all heaved a hidden sigh of relief as the pressure slowly let up, allowing them to catch their breath and reapply their genjutsu. None of you are to say a single word of what happened in here, SS rank secret. If I find out that even an iota of information was released about this, I will hunt down and execute each one of you personally. Hi, Hokage-sama. All of them acknowledged with a bead of cold sweat forming on their necks at the threat. Good, now one of you please help poor Sakazuki-san outside before she chokes on her own saliva. One of the ANBU snapped off a salute before walking out the office to assist the secretary. The remainder stepped back into the shadows of their illusion. The elderly Hokage sighed tiredly as he collapsed back into his seat, burying his face in his hands, saving himself the humiliation of allowing his subordinates to see the tears that flowed down his cheeks, tears of grief and sorrow at the apparent death of his surrogate grandson. 1 month later. Bottom of endless chasm. 0900 HRS. The sound of 2 muffled impacts broke the concentration of the blonde-haired youth sitting cross-legged upon the unforgiving stone ground. Eyes fluttering open from the meditative state he was in, the origin of the noise was revealed to be 2 completely identical copies of himself that were each holding on to different objects. Raising himself up from his sitting position, he accepted the objects in hand before he mentally dismissed the 2 Kage Bunshin as their purpose had been accomplished. Opening the first bag revealed a stack of neatly folded clothes that he had his clone purchase to replace the destroyed orange jumpsuit that clung to his frame. Quickly stripping himself free of his old jumpsuit, he donned the clothes that he had purchased at the advice of someone else. Once fully outfitted in his new clothes, he turned his attention to the other bandaged item that he had placed onto the ground. Carefully unwrapping the cloth that bound it, revealing a midnight black sheath decorated with gold and kanji markings along it. Placing his hand upon the handle, he grasped it tightly and unsheathed the blade. A well-crafted silver blade greeted him, a simple kodachi that he had his clone buy from a shinobi weapon store. Satisfied with the craftsmanship, he slid the blade back into its housing before tying it to his waist. Seems like someone is ready to show his presence to the world once more. The voice was not the same one that had tutored him in the ways of the Force. Instead, this one held a deeper tone and always ended with a growling sound. This was the voice of the Kyuubi no Yoko, 9-tailed demon fox, that resided in the seal that was painted on his stomach. The 5 months within his mind had been productive. One of the end results was him forming a much more amicable relationship with his tenant. Time to show the world that Uzumaki Naruto is back, better than ever. Closing his eyes in preparation, he called out to the Force and felt it respond to his wishes. The energy of the world flowed through him and into his legs as he crouched close to the ground, tensing his leg muscles as a small gust started kicking up around his form despite a complete lack of wind at the bottom of the chasm. Eyes snapping wide open, he leapt upwards whilst releasing the built-up energy within himself. The end result brought a large, ear-splitting grin to his face as he felt himself rocketing upwards through the chasm, wind blowing past him as he felt himself ascend higher and higher. Sunlight soon invaded his vision as he blasted out of the crack in the earth, performing a perfect mid-air somersault and landing on his feet. Looking around as his eyes readjusted to the sunlight, he noted that he had ironically landed in the exact same location that he had been before he was kicked into the chasm. Brushing some imaginary dust of his clothes, he looked up into the sky to determine the time of the day, causing his eyes to widen in alarm. Kyuso. I hope I'm not late for the finals. Kanahagakure Stadium. 0900 HRS. The day of the Chunin examination finals had finally arrived. Streams of excited villagers and visitors filtered into the stands at a steady pace. Murmurs and whispers of excitement filled the air, numerous people discussing about the final lineup of competitors and for whom they had placed their bets on. A special portion of the stands had been cordoned off for competitors as well as their teammates. A few of them had already begun to settle down there. Forehead, where the hell are your teammates? Shut it, Inobunta, pig. I'm sure that Kakashi-sensei is at fault for making Sasuke-kun late. He is always doing things like this. Haruno Sakura shouted out as she shook a fist angrily at an imaginary image of her perpetually late teacher. What about Naruto? He isn't down there as well. Ino pointed out as she gestured to the field below. True enough, gathered on the field that consisted of the main arena of the stadium were the final competitors in the Chunin examinations bar a few. Currently gathered on the field were the figures of Hyuga Neji, Nara Shikamaru, Aburame Shino, Sabaka no Gaara, Sabaka no Temari and Sabaka no Kankuro. Which meant that 3 competitors were missing, Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke and Kyuta Dosu. Now that you mentioned it, that's pretty strange. Naruto has never been one to be late for anything, Sakura admitted as she rubbed her chin in thought. Actually, I haven't heard anything from or about him for the entire month. I at least catch a glimpse of Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke-kun around town whenever they break from training. It's like he just vanished. I'm sure he just found a secret location to train in so that nobody will bother him or spy on him. Came the brash voice of Inuzuka Kiba as he plopped himself down into the seat behind the 2 gossiping girls. Spy on Naruto? Both of them echoed with equally incredulous expressions on their faces, clearly disbelieving of what the Inuzuka heir had just suggested. Hey, it could happen. He did defeat me after all. He farted at you, Ino deadpanned, causing a cloud of depression to form around the suddenly sulking boy. Don't remind me, I had to endure a week of teasing from both my Ka-san and Nei-san. Yash! What youthful conversation were you partaking in, my fellow youthful comrades? A sudden voice cut in, prompting them to look for the source despite them only knowing 2 particular people who spoke in that manner. Limping down the stairs with the help of a pair of crutches as well as his female teammates, who shot them an apologetic look, was the form of one Rock Lee. His arm and leg still in casts, a reminder of the ruthlessness of the sand-wielding Suna Genin. Helping him down into one of the front row seats, Tenten turned her curious gaze upon the rest of the Genin in hopes of someone filling them in. They were discussing about the missing competitors, 2 of them being Naruto and Sasuke, Akimichi Chuji kindly explained, though his words were punctuated by the crunching of potato chips that he was stuffing himself with. Naruto-kun will surely appear. He is a fellow genius of hard work, and had sworn an oath to defeat Neji-kun during the preliminaries. His youthfulness would not allow him to break such a promise. Yash! Lee cried out with vigor, clearly excited to see his genius teammate go up against a fellow dead last. Despite the eccentric way he said it, Lee is right. From what I've heard and seen of Naruto-san, it doesn't seem like he would be one to break such a solemn promise. Tenten said, adding on to what the bowl-cut Genin had mentioned. Ayano, I agree with Lee-san and Tenten-san, and Naruto-kun wouldn't break any promise he makes, Hyuga Hinata stated in her usual soft-spoken tone, fingers pressed together in a shy gesture. Yeah, I agree, Naruto may be loud, annoying and dumb, but he would never break a promise that he made. Working with him for all these months has taught me that much about him at least. Sakura said with a smile, convincing herself not to worry about her teammates. Kage Booth. 0900 HRS. Has there been any sign of either Uchiha Sasuke or Uzumaki Naruto? Sarutobi Hiruzen asked the jounin beside him, keeping up appearances that the blonde Jinchuriki was missing instead of the actual truth. Unfortunately, we have had no luck in locating either boys or Kakashi-san. Not to worry, Hokage-sama. We have ANBU teams searching for any traces of them. I understand. Any further words were interrupted by the arrival of several men within the booth, the one in the lead wearing the customary robes of a Kage with two Sunajounen on either side of him. Well, if it isn't Kazekage Dano, I trust that the trip here has been of no issue for you? Hiruzen started the conversation with some friendly banter. Not at all. In fact, I am rather glad the Chunin exams are held here this time. I fear that while you're still young, your body might not have been able to handle the strain of traveling to a different country. Maybe it's time for you to decide on a Godame 5th? The Yondaime Kazekage shot back, his tone teasing causing a chuckle to emerge from the elderly Kage. Ha ha ha, please don't treat me like an old man. I still have at least another good 5 years inside this body of mine. Well now, I think it's about time we begin. The audience seems to be getting antsy. Pushing himself up from his seat, the Sandaime stepped forward to address the crowd. I would like to thank everyone for coming to attend Konohagakure Chunin selection examinations. Of all the participants that had gathered here on the first day, their numbers have been whittled down through various tests of intellect, endurance, and skill. Now only 8 remain. This 8 will compete in a tournament-style bracket system until only a single winner emerges. We will now start the main tournament matches. Please stay and watch till the very end. If there are 8 finalists, it appears that 2 are missing, the Kazekage commented offhandedly, though it was still heard by the Sandaime. When Naruto does not show up, everyone will just assume he quit due to his nerves or for some other reason. I can't let such sensitive information such as our village's Jinchuriki having died escape. Hiruzen thought to himself, his eyes betraying the sad thought of not being able to see his surrogate grandson perform in the finals. Shiranu Genma twirled the senbon in his mouth around as he fished inside of his flak jacket before pulling out a piece of paper. Unfurling it, he presented it to the awaiting genin. Expressions of surprise flared across several of their faces. That's right. There have been some minor changes to the tournament layout due to the sound genin forfeiting due to personal reasons. Please check again to see who you will be fighting. Genma explained. Hey, I have a question. Shikamaru lazily raised a hand to draw the proctor's attention. What happens to those that don't make it on time for their match? That's simple. If they are not here by the time of their match, they are disqualified. Thanks, Shikamaru replied, but was inwardly processing 100 different thoughts. Where the hell are Naruto and Sasuke? They are the last 2 I expect to not show up for this event. Troublesome. Alright you all, if there are no further questions, welcome to the final round of the Chunin exams. The arena may be different, but the same rules from the preliminaries applies here as well. There are none. The winner is determined by death, knockout, or if the opponent acknowledges defeat. However, if I determine that the fight is over, I will step in and stop it. Understand? Genma stated seriously as he locked gazes with each of the participants, frowning when he passed over the youngest son of the Kazekage. This one will be a problem. Amplifying his voice with chakra, his next instructions echoed clearly throughout the stadium. Now the first match will be between Hyuga Neji and Uzumaki Naruto. All other participants are to vacate the arena and proceed to the waiting area established for you in the stands. Waiting until only the male Hyuga remained on the field, he addressed the crowd again. Seeing as Uzumaki Naruto is not here, a standard allocated waiting time of 5 minutes is allowed for the participant to arrive. If said participant fails to arrive within the stipulated timing, he will be immediately disqualified. TSK, looks like fate has declared me to be the victor. At least he was smart enough to back down rather than humiliate himself by turning up. Neji smirked as he crossed his arms over his chest. Don't count your chickens before they hatch, Genma retorted, deciding that he did not like the kid's attitude, causing the boy to scoff. Once fate has decreed your lot in life, nothing can change that. Within the stands. Hey Shika, did Naruto tell you where he was? Chuji asked in curiosity, drawing the attention of the other gathered genin. Tisk troublesome, no he did not. I haven't seen him at all during this month as well, Shikamaru replied, still bothered by the non-attendance of his fellow ex-classmates. Don't worry, I'm sure he will be here, Sakura stated with resolution, confidence shining in her eyes. Forehead Ino did not expect such confidence from her pink-haired rival, especially towards the blonde dead last of the academy. Naruto, he has always been there to pull us through when it mattered. During the wave mission at the bridge and in the Forest of Death, it was always him and Sasuke-kun that got us through, so I've decided to put my faith in my teammate that he will once again pull through even when the odds are counting him out. Yash! Sakura-chan is right. Naruto-kun will surely surprise us all once again with the power of his youth. Lee shouted energetically, waving his crutches in the air. Lee, calm down, you'll aggravate your injuries again. Tenten scolded the taijutsu specialist, causing him to hang his head in apology. Heh, so what if your little buddy doesn't turn up? From what I've seen in the prelims, he is as good as dead if he steps foot on that field. Kankuro mocked from his position beside his siblings. What did you say, make-up boy? Kiba growled as he made to get up from his seat, frowning when he was restrained by Hinata. It's war paint, Kankuro shouted back with a vein throbbing on his forehead. Not that I want to be the bad guy, but Neji is the rookie of the previous batch of Chunin. What are Naruto's chances against a guy like him? Chuji asked with a small frown. Normally I'd say that Neji would straight up trash him, but we haven't heard from the troublesome blonde for the entire duration of the month. To me, it means that he must have been training so rigorously that he did not even have time to walk about the village. So it could go either way, Shikamaru said with a sigh as he stared out at the field. Come on Naruto, where the hell are you? One thing I've learned is not to underestimate Naruto. He is stubborn as hell and cunning as a fox. Even if he can't beat Neji in a straight-up fight, he will definitely find a way to give himself the advantage. Kiba grinned as he slammed a fist into an open palm. This fight is going to be epic. I can't wait to see Naruto wipe that smirk off that arrogant asshole. Naruto Sakura bit her lower lip in worry. Stadium Arena 0910 HRS. Uzumaki Naruto has 30 more seconds to turn up, or he will be disqualified from this tournament, Genma announced, resulting in whispers and grunts of dissatisfaction from the audience. Genma nervously chewed on the samban in his mouth, knowing that it was not a good start to the tournament if the participant of the first match did not even turn up. Eyes dropping down to the stopwatch in his hand, he made a sound of annoyance when he noticed that only 10 seconds remained. It seems I was right after all, Neji stated as he turned around and started walking back to the waiting area. TSK Uzumaki Naruto dash. Genma paused when he noticed a shadow falling from the sky. Squinting through the glare of the sun, he managed to make out a humanoid shape. Boom! A cloud of sand was kicked up when the figure impacted the arena floor, obscuring the vision of everyone trying to determine the identity of the person within the cloud of dust. Somebody call my name? The dust cleared to reveal spiky sandy blonde locks that fell over a pair of cerulean blue eyes. Whisker-like marks decorated each cheek that was spread in a cocky grin. Despite looking thinner than before, everyone could immediately recognize him even though his fashion sense had changed dramatically. No longer was he wearing the orange eyesore of a jumpsuit, instead in its place was something more practical yet uncommon. Naruto was decked out in robe-like garments similar to the Hyuga household, except his version was more form-fitting and did not hang loosely about his body. They were also gray in color, 2 different tones to be precise. And clearly displayed to everyone was the blade attached to his left hip. Kage Booth. Sarutobi Hiruzen was initially hit by an overwhelming sense of disbelief, then he was forced to smother his urge to jump down into the arena and crush the boy in a hug. There would be time for that later. Instead he reined in his emotions and refused to allow the tears of happiness to fall down his face. He could not allow such displays in front of his counterpart, after all. Another individual above the Kage booth had no such restraint, choosing to allow the tears of joy and relief flow as he gazed at the son of his student standing in the arena. Jiraiya wiped his eyes with the back of his hands, not wanting the tears to prevent him from watching the match. Wondering just what his godson had been doing during his so-called period of death, and how much he had improved, which was clear from the way he had just arrived and how he held himself. Competitor booth. Is that Naruto? Ino asked in disbelief, rubbing her eyes before checking again. It is. Just thinner and not wearing that horrible monstrosity. Sakura could not help but cheer in relief, both for his timely appearance and his new wardrobe. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he actually looks good, Ino exclaimed in surprise. Maybe he decided to cut back on the ramen? Kiba joked as he leaned forward in his seat, excitement dancing across his features. Yash! Go Naruto-kun! Go Neji-kun! Lee shouted from his spot but refrained from making exaggerated actions under the watchful gaze of his teammate. Arena. Cutting it a little close, kid. Ginma drawled as he looked at his stopwatch, a second left on the timer. There were some unforeseen circumstances. I'm here now though, can we start the match? Naruto asked as he cracked his neck in preparation. You should have just stayed away, at least you would have saved yourself the humiliation of losing in front of everybody, Neji stated calmly, an indifferent expression on his face. I could say the same to you. However, I believe actions speak louder than words, so are you going to stand there flapping your gums all day or are we going to fight? His taunt seemed to work as a look of annoyance briefly flitted across the face of the Hyuga prodigy before it was schooled back into his usual expression, the Dijitsu-wielding genin settling into his clan's taijutsu stance. Seeing that both participants were ready for battle, Genma leapt backwards to the arena wall as he shouted out. Let the first fight begin. Both participants remained stationary, both of them clearly studying their opponent and waiting for them to make a move. Naruto grinned as he placed a hand on the handle of his kodachi. Veins bulged around Neji's eyes as he activated his Byakugan, White Eye. Don't worry, I'm not going to use this blade. In fact, I'm not going to use anything other than taijutsu to beat you down into the ground, Naruto announced as he smacked a fist into his palm. Humph, I see that whatever training you had this month has made you arrogant, Uzumaki. However, challenging a Hyuga to a taijutsu only matches a death wish. Not even Lee has been able to defeat me in straight-up taijutsu. Watch carefully, Hanabi. There is no Hyuga whose blood is thicker than Neji. He is truly a prodigy of the Juken style of fighting. Hyuga Hayashi explained to his younger daughter, though inwardly he was sighing. A once-in-a-lifetime prodigy, and he was born to the branch family. Hizashi, there is truly something wrong with our clan. Hi, Ota-san. Hyuga Hanabi was the younger sister of Hinata by an age gap of 2 years. She was more proficient than her sister in the Hyuga martial arts despite the difference in age. That boy he just claimed that he would go up against Neji Nizan in taijutsu only interesting. The kid is crazy, declaring that he will win using taijutsu only against a Hyuga. I'm not even a Konoha shinobi and I know that is straight up suicide. Kankuro laughed out loud. As much as I don't want to admit it, but he is right. What the hell is Naruto thinking? Kiba exclaimed as he stood up from his seat, irritation evident on his face. Naruto, you better beat him up good or you'll regret it. Naruto-kun, your flames of youth burn brightly. Lee cheered even louder at the prospect at an all-taijutsu match. And Naruto-kun, Hinata stuttered out in worry. Her cousin was hailed as a Hyuga prodigy after all. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he slumped forward, though his eyes were keenly fixed onto the battlefield. Go Naruto! Kick his ass! Sakura pumped her fist in the air as she shouted. Naruto paused when he heard the shouts, surprise evident on his face as he listened to all the various cheering and praise. Shrugging them off for the moment, he heard the sound of feet hitting the sandy ground and turned to engage his approaching opponent. Don't underestimate the Juken, gentle fist, of the Hyuga clan, Neji shouted as he thrust his arm forward, fingertips alight with the blue glow associated with chakra usage. Naruto exhaled deeply as he surrendered himself to the force, allowing the all-knowing energy to flow through his limbs and direct his movements. As the force surged through his body, he realized that he could predict where his opponent was going to strike based on the subtle twitching of muscles as well as displacement of the air. Taking a small step to the right, he twisted his torso slightly just enough for the fingers of his opponent to pass in front of him. However, that did not deter his opponent in the slightest. Instead, the white-eyed boy seemed to pick up the pace of his attacks. Finger thrusts, palm strikes, backhand slaps were all mixed into the onslaught of attacks that were flying at him. And each and every single one of them was perfectly evaded or diverted with simple taijutsu of his own, though he was still being forced backwards by the intensity of the attacks. A sudden premonition through the force notified him of a suspicious lull in his opponent's attack pattern, which was proven true when Neji took a small hop backwards before rushing in with a double open palm thrust. The attack was clearly meant to catch him off guard due to the original pattern of light attacks, aiming to deliver a heavy blow to break through his guard. However, instead of backpedaling or raising his arms in an attempt to guard, both of which the Hyuga prodigy had factored in, Naruto chose to dash forward into his guard. With a quick upward slap with both arms, Naruto diverted the attacks of his opponent before drawing his arms back and unleashing a devastating double open palm thrust of his own. The attack connected with the chest of his opponent, effectively knocking the breath out of him and pushing him back several meters. Here the blonde-haired shinobi stood upright again, a grin on his face whilst rolling his neck and shoulders. Come now, Neji-chan, that can't be everything you got. In the stands, eyes were bulging and jaws were dropped when the audience witnessed something unexpected. The Uzumaki kid was dominating the Hyuga prodigy at pure taijutsu combat. A certain group of jounin were among the people who were shocked. Sarutobi Asuma even left his jaw hanging for so long that his cigarette fell out. That's Uzumaki Naruto? Kakashi's brat? The prankster and dead last of the academy? Asuma voiced aloud in disbelief. I don't believe it, his dominating the match. He was matching the Hyuga blow for blow in a pure taijutsu fight. Yuhi Kurinai gaped at the scene that was still replaying inside her head. I knew he was something special when I chose to drink his blood outside the forest of death. Woo! Go Naru-chan! Kick that pompous asshole's ass! Mitarashi Enko was cackling madly as she cheered, causing sweat drops to form on many of her fellow colleagues' faces. For him to have improved this much over the course of 1 month, Madogai whispered with narrowed eyes before he suddenly punched his fist into the sky and shouted aloud. Kakashi, my hip rival! Your flames of youth burn brightly for imparting such skills in taijutsu to young Naruto-kun. Yash! Somehow I don't think Kakashi was the one that taught him during the 1-month interval, Kurenai said, a small frown working its way onto her face. Yeah, that perverted scarecrow has never been that proficient at taijutsu. Not to mention he is as lazy as an ara. No way could he have brought Naruto up to this level of taijutsu, Anko added on. No, I don't think Kurenai was referring to his teaching skills. What she meant was that the few times we saw Kakashi, he would always be with Uchiha Sasuke. We inferred that he was probably teaching the last Uchiha to properly use his Sharingan and tips on how to fight that Tsunagenin with the gourd, Asuma said with a frown as well. That was certainly something for the gathered jounin to think about. Woo! Go Naruto! Knock some sense into that asshole! Kiba shouted out as he slammed his fists onto the railing. Turning around, he pointed a finger at the surprised Kankuro. You are so going to get your ass handed to you by him. That is if you even get past my man Shino here. That is illogical. His rate of success is smaller than the size of my Kakachu, Shino stated in his calm tone. Kankuro growled and reached for the bandaged puppet on his back, but a strong grip on his arm by his sister, along with a disapproving shake of the head, was enough to stay his actions. Turning his attention back to the field, he ground his teeth and bared with the mocking. If you aren't going to come to me, I guess I'll just have to go over to. His statement was cut short as he disappeared in a blur of speed, a small cloud of sand rising from the point that he had kicked off. You! Neji barely had time to raise his arms in a crossguard before a haymaker crashed into his guard, the impact forcing him back several steps. He could feel his bones groaning in protest from the hit, something that had only ever happened when he was sparring with Guy before. Just how strong are his blows? He was not given any more time to think as his Byakugan spotted his blonde-haired opponent rushing in from his left flank. He twisted his body around and flung out a jab. Naruto foresaw the attack and easily batted it away before throwing a hook at the side of his opponent's head, which was dodged at the last second by veering his head backwards. A victorious grin broke out across the face of the blonde-haired shinobi as he unclenched his fist and grabbed a fistful of his opponent's shirt. Gotcha, you elusive bastard! Kyuso! No choice. I have to reveal my trump card, Neji cursed as he started to pivot about his right foot, pushing out chakra from all the tenketsu located around his body. Kaiten, heavenly spin! Naruto was forced to let go in surprise when a dome of rotating chakra expanded around his opponent, the force pushing away everything in an outwards direction. As the Hyuga prodigy spun to a stop, there were obvious friction markings on the ground around him that depicted just how strong the rotational forces were. Oto-san, that was? Hanabi asked as she glanced at her father, whom had an expression of surprise on his face. Yes, the Kaiten. A technique from the Hyuga main branch family that is only passed on to the heirs. For him to have mastered it on his own, Hayashi could not help as a small smile tugged at his lips. Brother, you have truly left your legacy behind. Don't blink, or you'll miss it because it is already over for you. You are within the field of my divination. Neji spoke out loud as he slid into a low stance, one hand near his outstretched foot and the other hand held out directly behind him. 2 palms. Neji blurred forward in an impressive display of speed as he performed 2 consecutive jabs towards his blonde-haired target, only to blink in shock when he slipped around them. Focusing on his attack once again, another 2 consecutive jabs were made, followed by another 4 consecutive jabs. 4 palms. The blonde slipped through the attacks again. 8 palms. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he avoided 2 before being forced to use his hands to divert the path of the remaining 2 jabs. 16 palms. Neji gritted his teeth in annoyance and disbelief that his ace in the hole move was having no effect against the dead last of the academy. He pumped more chakra into his limbs in an effort to increase his speed. 32 palms. The intensity of the next 16 jabs had Naruto on his toes as his senses were forced into overdrive to keep up with the speed at which the jabs were being thrown at him. A small sidestep followed by a backhand, a twist of the body followed by an open palm to divert another jab, a tilt of the head followed by a nudge of an elbow. To the people viewing the fight, it looked more like a well-choreographed dance than an actual fight. 64 palms. The final onslaught of 32 jabs were delivered at such a blistering pace that it put the previous 16 to shame. They came at nearly twice the speed and intensity. Sweat started dripping down the neck of the blonde Uzumaki when he realized that his body was not conditioned enough to keep up with the pace, even if his senses were honed enough to keep track of the attacks. Several attacks were breaking through his guard, closing the tenketsu points that were hit and numbing the affected area in an instant. Cerulean blue eyes widened slightly when a particularly powerful thrust slammed into his left shoulder, knocking him off balance just as his opponent reared back to deliver the final blow. Hack Rokujuyan Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms. The final attack was an open palm arm thrust that was driven straight at the sternum in a decisive blow to end the match. A strong gust of wind blew out from between the two genin due to the strength behind the attack. Neji was left panting slightly from the effort that he exerted during his technique. A smile slowly stretched across his face before several fake coughs interrupted him. Man, that was pretty intense. His carefully crafted mask of cold indifference shattered when he noticed that his final attack had been stopped by his opponent, the blonde having used both hands to clamp down on his forearm to prevent any further movement. His palm a mere inch away from the gray robe-covered chest of his target. Impossible! He just managed to counter one of the strongest techniques of the Hyuga Taijutsu style. Hayashi gaped as he rose from his seat in disbelief. To provoke such a reaction from my usually emotionless father, you intrigue me, Uzumaki Naruto. Hanabi thought to herself, a small smile on her face. That was a pretty close call, just means I have to get my body back into shape again. Naruto exhaled in relief before he lifted his head and stared straight into the Byakugan of his opponent, a smirk forming upon his face. Over for me, you said? Well, looks like I'm still standing, so I guess it's my turn now. Tugging the captured arm forward, he tucked it under his left armpit and trapped it there against his ribs in a tight grip. In an attempt to retaliate, Neji aimed a jab with his remaining hand only to have it caught in a grip by the wrist. Not wasting any time, the blonde slammed a force-enhanced knee into the opponent's unprotected stomach. HRK. Neji grimaced as he coughed out a wad of blood from the blow. Without any mercy, the unforgiving force-driven knee slammed home twice again, with each time holding significantly more force. Releasing the gasping genin from his makeshift hold, Naruto delivered a flurry of hooks, jabs and haymakers that found purchase on every inch of the Hyuga genin's face before ending with a double rabbit punch to the chest. Neji grunted in pain as his body was blasted backwards, though he managed to stay upright through sheer force of willpower. Breaking into a run from his stationary position, Naruto accelerated towards his opponent only to stomp his right foot into the ground at the last instance and pivot about it, transferring the entirety of his built-up momentum into a single devastating roundhouse kick that connected squarely against his opponent in the chest, the force behind the kick blasting Neji straight across the field and into the wall of the arena. Dust from the impact slowly drifted away to reveal the prone and unmoving form of one Hyuga Neji, blood leaking from the corners of his mouth. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto of Konoha, Genma announced as he lifted the hand of said genin skyward, subtly whispering to him. Good fight, kid, glad to see that brat get knocked down a peg or two, maybe 10 from that beating you gave him. I aim to please, Naruto responded with a mischievous tone, a genuine smile upon his face as he basked in the cheers of the crowd following the aftermath of his victory. Turning around to make his way back to the competitor waiting area, he clenched his fists as translucent swirls of force energy gathered around them. Through death may we find purpose, through purpose may we find life, and through life may we find the force. The stands of the stadium were filled with the incessant buzz of excited chatter. This were of course coming from the foreign travelers that came to witness the Chunin examination finals. Did you see that? That kid just defeated a Hyuga in pure hand-to-hand combat alone. I know. That was an amazing fight. Ha! Even if I lost money in that bet, that fight was worth every single ryo I lost. Uzumaki Naruto, that is definitely a name I'll remember. Kaya! Naruto-kun! However, in comparison to the praises heaped upon him by the foreigners, the residents of Konohagakure no Sato were of a different state of mind. The civilians were restless and had worried looks upon their faces. Some of them even had an enraged expression that probably had something to do with their bets. How did the demon brat get so strong? He just beat up the Hyuga prodigy. What kind of demonic powers did he use? He must have cheated somehow. I can't believe this. That stupid brat. How dare he cost me 2 months of my wages? Kaya! Naruto-kun! Though seemingly, fangirls apparently are the same whether local or foreign. Strangely enough, the object of their discussion was nowhere to be seen after the end of his match was announced, and he had disappeared into the darkness of the entrance corridor. The audience members were not the only ones to notice the lack of his presence, as soon enough the rest of the genin were looking around in confusion. Did anybody notice that Naruto has not come up the stairs yet? Ino asked, the question causing everyone to glance at the staircase that led downwards towards the arena floor. Now that you mentioned it, it has been a few minutes since the match ended. Shouldn't he be up here already? Tenten pointed out. That's strange, I would expect him to be up here gloating about his victory, troublesome blonde. Is there something wrong with being blonde, Shikamaru? Troublesome. The seemingly permanently lethargic boy commented upon seeing his female teammate's enraged expression. Hey, no need to worry guys, he probably just had to go take a leak or something. You know, nature calls when it calls and all that, Kiba said before chuckling at his own joke, though the majority seemed to agree with this line of reasoning. Yash. Kiba-kun is right. Naruto-kun is obviously bursting with youthfulness after that fight. He has obviously gone to the toilet to relieve himself of some of that youthfulness. Lee shouted out in agreement, not realizing the unintended innuendo behind his words. Oh, I wouldn't mind helping him relieve some of that youthfulness myself, he, Ino whispered with a small flush across her cheeks. An unconscious shiver ran up her spine from the subtle glare thrown her way by the timid Hyuga heiress. While the rest of the Konoha genin were chatting animatedly about the recent match, Sakura glanced worriedly at the stairs before looking at the clock situated on a nearby wall. Naruto has changed a lot over the past month, is he even the same person? She thought to herself before shaking it off with a small laugh. What am I thinking, he will always be the same baka. Instead I should be more worried about Sasuke-kun. He is going to be late for his match. I bet this is Kakashi-sensei's fault. His tardiness is rubbing off on my teammates. Konoha Stadium, Infirmary. Pain. That was the first feeling that Hyuga Neji was reacquainted with upon regaining his consciousness, a dull aching pain that covered the entirety of his torso and a majority of his face. The second thing he noticed was the amount of white that greeted his vision. Almost everything within range was colored the same stark white that could only be associated with a medical treatment area. I see you have regained consciousness, Hyuga-san. A rough voice greeted him. Turning his head to the side, mentally suppressing the flare of pain that accompanied the movement, he spotted a medic Nin approaching his bedside. What happened? He gasped out, even talking hurt. After Uzumaki-san decimated you? The emergency response team was dispatched and carried your body back here for treatment. We're in the infirmary wing of the stadium. I lost, Neji whispered, more to himself than the medic. Well, you seem to be in much better shape than when you arrived. We managed to heal the majority of the damage, but your body really took a beating, so I would advise to hold off on any heavy training for at least a week. The medic stated in his gruff voice, deactivating the diagnosis jutsu that he had used to check his patient. I see. Well, I'll get going now, seeing as you have a visitor waiting to speak with you. He has been waiting there ever since we brought you in. Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching, the pale-eyed boy tilted his head again, and surprise fluttered over his features when he noticed the familiar blonde mop of hair as well as whisker-like marks. Have you come to gloat about your victory, Uzumaki? He sighed in resignation. No. What? I said no. Is that so hard to understand? If not, then why are you here? Silence descended upon the pair for a good duration after the question was asked. It was neither a tense silence nor was it a comfortable one. You're not a bad person, Neji, that much I can tell. Naruto started off, surprising the bedridden genin. Life dealt you a shitty hand. You were born into the branch family, and your father lost his life in exchange for his brother in the main family. A brief pause occurred as the blonde-haired youth seemed to ponder his next words. What you fail to understand is that you are not controlled by these circumstances. Take me, for example. I was born an orphan. I had never felt the love of a family, and had nobody to raise me. I lived off the streets and was shunned by a majority of the population, not to mention the dead last of the Shinobi Academy. Naruto raised his arms out wide and smirked. Look where I stand now. I trained harder than anybody I know to get to where I am. I am living proof that whatever hand that was dealt to you by fate can be changed. Neji remained silent as he processed the words that hammered into his psyche. Take a look at yourself as well. You are hailed as a prodigy of the Hyuga clan despite being born into the branch family. You trained hard to surpass the limitations that they placed on you, even going so far as to surpass the heir of your clan. What is that if not defying fate? Seeing that the Hyuga prodigy was lost in his own thoughts, and sensing the presence of another approaching, he turned around and started walking away. Don't let fate control you. You are the master of your own destiny. Looks like there is someone else here to visit you. As if on cue, Hyuga Hayashi stepped out from the shadows of the corridor that lead into the infirmary. Uzumaki Naruto, I have to say that your performance was something I definitely did not expect, Hayashi stated, keeping his tone polite and neutral. Hyuga-san, I excel at the unexpected. Now I think you have someone far more important to talk to than me. I'll just be getting out of your hair. Naruto replied flippantly as he continued strolling past the Hyuga clan head and down the corridor, where he felt another presence. Turning the next bend, he spotted a girl that was about a year or two younger than him. She had long black hair that fell down to her mid-back as well as framed her face. He pegged her as a Hyuga the moment she turned to face him and revealed her pale, pupilless eyes. Her attire consisted of a simple black sleeveless training gi, under which she wore a mesh shirt. Uzumaki Naruto? Yes, though I can't say I know who you are? Apologies, I am Hyuga Hanabi, younger sister of Hinata-sama. Hanabi stated as she performed a formal bow. Ah, I see. Though there is no need to be so formal with me, it's not as if I'm royalty or anything, Naruto said casually, though he was subtly probing for her intentions through the force. Be that as it may, I respect strength, and you have definitely impressed me by your performance against my cousin, Hanabi said with a small smile before a curious look overtook her features. Though I am curious as to how you managed to guard against the hack Rokujian Sho, 8 trigrams 64 palms, it is something that only the most talented and experienced of Hyuga clan members can accomplish. Ah, so that's her angle, she is curious about my abilities. Now Hanabi-chan. Naruto smirked when he noticed the slight twitch at the suffix. A shinobi has to have his secrets, after all deception is the greatest weapon. Though let's just say that I have a little voice in the back of my head that tells me stuff. First off, it's Hanabi-san to you. Second, what are you even talking about? What voice? That would be telling, wouldn't it? The blonde-haired shinobi grinned as he resumed his walk back towards the stands, not before throwing one last remark over his shoulder. See you around, Hanabi-chan. Grr. That insufferable. Hanabi growled as her eyebrow twitched in annoyance with her face red from a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Within the stands. Hey, where the heck is Sasuke? Isn't his match next? Naruto called out as he emerged from the stairwell. He hasn't arrived yet. Speaking of which, where the heck did you disappear to after your match, huh? Sakura shouted as she pointed finger at him accusingly. Shrugging dismissively, he walked over to the railings and leaned his head on it. Had a lot of adrenaline left after the fight, decided to take walk. That's not important though, Sasuke does know that his match is next, right? He will be disqualified if he does not show up. Confucius once said, the wise do not approach the dangerous. A wise decision on his part perhaps? Shino suggested. The gathered genin could hear the dissent starting to build within the crowd as numerous people started shouting for the matches to continue, obviously feeling the need for more adrenaline-pumping action like the first match. What the heck is that guy doing? Is he planning to forfeit his match? Shikamaru asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. As if that will happen, that bastard is way too prideful for something like that, plus we promised that we would meet each other in the finals. Naruto grinned viciously, already imagining the proud Uchiha on the receiving end of his new skills. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he gazed lazily at the field. Kage viewing booth. Hokage-sama, it seems that the teams have been unsuccessful in locating Hatake-san and his pupil. Rado, a jounin with a prominent scar that ran across the left side of his face, whispered discreetly into the ear of the elderly Kage. Letting out a sigh at the thought of the famous jounin passing on his tardiness to his student, it seems that we have no choice but to disqualify. If I may offer my input, Hokage-dano. The voice of the Kazekage cut in, the man gesturing with his hand towards the viewing booth that housed the daimyos and others of noble birth. I, along with a majority of the lords and nobles, are here today to witness the performance of the famous last Uchiha of Konohagakure. It would reflect badly on your village in the eyes of these people if you were to disqualify Uchiha-san before he even had the chance to showcase his prowess. If he can't even make it a point to be on time for a major event like this, he does not deserve the rank of Chunin. Rado scoffed, clearly upset at the leeway the young Uchiha was receiving. Unfortunately, the point Kazekage-dano made has validity as well. It would indeed reflect badly on the village as well as affect our standing with the fire daimyo if we do not put up a good showing very well. Sarutobi Hiruzen conceded with a cough as he stood up to address the stadium. I apologize for the inconvenience. Unfortunately, Uchiha Sasuke has failed to turn up on time for his match. However, we were willing to postpone his match to the last round, and to be fair to the other participants, it will impact heavily on his chances of promotion. Arigato, Hokage-dano, that is more than satisfactory. It will also give me a chance to see how well my youngest fares against Uchiha-san, the Kazekage said, tilting his head in appreciation. Sandame-sama, is this really okay? Rado asked. As I have mentioned, it will affect his chances of promotion. Would you kindly inform the proctor to begin the next match as soon as possible? Hi, Hokage-sama. Using a quick shunshin body flicker to traverse from the booth to the arena floor, he whispered the instructions to the senbunchuing proctor before vanishing again in a swirl of leaves. Ginma allowed a flicker of annoyance to cross his face before sighing and addressing the gathered people. As Hokage-sama has stated, Uchiha Sasuke will have his match postponed. Now will the participants of the next match please proceed down to the field? Sabaku no Kankuro and Aburaim Shino. Shit, this match isn't even important in the long run. Kankuro muttered under his breath, low enough that only his sister could hear him. Not to mention that I don't want to reveal all the tricks that I had recently installed inside Karasu before the plan begins. A silent conversation seemed to happen between the two siblings before Kankuro leaned over the railing and cleared his throat. Proctor, I forfeit the match. This statement drew many different reactions. The first and loudest was the uproar of the audience. They had already waited for quite a long duration for the Uchiha match, which had been postponed, only for the next match to be forfeited. The second was from the assembled genin that were in the competitor booth. He forfeited? Ino asked in confusion. I knew it. Spouting all that nonsense just now, you're just full of hot air, aren't ya? Kiba shouted across the booth, paying back the puppeteer for his earlier words. That's not very youthful. I know that it is logical that he would not fare well against my Kikeichu, since they consume chakra and his puppeteer abilities rely on forming threads composed entirely of chakra. However, I did not expect him to forfeit without even attempting a fight. I have heard that Suna puppeteers usually have more than a few dimensions when they fight. Troublesome. While most of his peers were either confused or jeering at the opposition, Naruto narrowed his eyes in suspicion when he felt a slight tingling sensation through the force when the siblings were whispering. Trusting his instincts, he closed his eyes for a moment as he drew upon his power to read emotions through the force. Anxiety, worry, anticipation, Naruto mumbled to himself, opening his eyes to focus on the Suna genin. They must be hiding something big enough that they were worried that showing off their skills would compromise it. Seeing the negative and suspicious glances being thrown at them, the blonde-haired Suna Kunoichi made a snap decision by whipping open her battle fan and riding it down into the arena. This served to quiet down the audience a little, though the shinobi portion were still slightly suspicious about the forfeit. Little eager, aren't ya? Genma quipped as he fiddled with the samban in his mouth. Just start the match already. Very well, Nara Shikamaru, get your ass down here. Troublesome, because of that forfeit my match has been moved forward again. Maybe I should just forfeit like that guy did. Shikamaru sighed as he imagined how much more troublesome the punishment from his mother would be if he went through with the forfeit. With feet dragging, the pineapple-haired genin shuffled his way down the stairs and onto the field where the harsh glare of the morning sun beat down on him. Sluggishly moving towards the middle, he stopped opposite his opponent and failed to stifle the yawn that emerged from his mouth. This obviously had a different meaning to the furious Kunoichi, whom had taken it as a sign that he thought that she was beneath him. Troublesome, why do I have to fight a woman again? Shikamaru muttered, unknowingly digging his grave deeper. Having sensed the growing ire in the foreign Kunoichi, Genma did the smart thing and hightailed it out of there as his voice echoed throughout the stadium. Hajime. Not wasting any time, Temari flicked two kunai into her hands as she dashed forward. This action caught the resident Nara genius by surprise, as he expected for her to resort to using her large cumbersome weapon. Alas, she did not fall prey to his veiled attempt at taunting her. A quick leap back put him out of range of her swipe, though the danger did not end there, as she immediately launched her weapons at him. Pulling out a kunai of his own, he used it to deflect the oncoming projectiles, and his eye caught sight of her charging at him with fan in hand from his left flank. Sensing something amiss, he leapt back and palmed the kunai in his hand at her direction. Narrowing his eye in realization when the kunai sailed right through the Kunoichi, revealing that it was an ordinary Bunshin no Jutsu. With a start, he remembered how she had glided down into the arena and snapped his head skywards in time to see her form falling towards him, battle fan brandished above her head. Thinking quickly, he brought out a couple of smoke bombs and detonated them a moment before she slammed her fan into the ground with a roar of anger. The wind generated from the impact point served to instantly clear away the smoke screen, but it had already served its purpose, as the Nara had performed a quick substitution with a log from the nearby forested area. Geez, that would have killed me, troublesome woman. I know you're hiding in there, boy. Temari called out as she glared at the small patch of forestry. If I remember correctly, the Nara clan uses shadow to attack and bind their opponents. So he is probably trying to lure me into the trees where there will be more cover and shadows for him to attack me with. Go Shikamaru! Get her with a 16-hit combo attack! Ino shouted out from her seat. Not that I'm not happy, but Munch, don't you think that for Shikamaru to be in the finals, Munch, it seems a little out of place? Chuji asked suddenly, between mouthfuls of his chips. Don't say something like that. Sure, he may not be the strongest, but Shikamaru is fantastic at coming up with strategies and plans. I have a feeling that is how we were able to make it through these exams in the first place. Ino replied with a grin. Yeah, I guess you're right, but he'll just quit soon anyway. I'm telling ya, Shika finds this kinds of things a hassle, so he is definitely going to throw in the towel soon, Chuji stated with a shrug before going back to snacking on his chips. And this is me telling you that you're wrong. Just now he totally made his way down into the arena without anyone telling him to. He is surprisingly revved up for this match, Ino said before standing up and punching her fist in the air. Go Shikamaru! Kick her ass! TSK, troublesome blonde, said Genin muttered when he heard the shout before looking up at the sky. Look at those clouds floating so freely up in the sky without a care in the world. I even became a shinobi because I thought it would make life more interesting. An image of Naruto standing triumphantly over the beaten form of the Hyuga prodigy appeared in his mind. Slowly a smirk made its way onto his face as he pressed his fingers together in a weird hand sign. I suppose things can't always be that simple, and I can't look like a lame ass after Naruto put up such a great show. Temari could feel her patience running thin as she waited for her opponent to show his face. She caught sight of a flicker of movement just as a handful of kunai launched out of the foliage in her direction. She brought her fan about and deflected the weapons with ease. Looking up, she saw the Nara leaning against the trunk of a tree with a bored look on his face. Troublesome woman, why are you making this longer than it has to be? He drawled, digging a finger into his ear. That's it, punk. You asked for it. Temari roared in anger as she snapped her battle fan fully open, exposing all 3 moons as she reared it backwards in preparation. Futon, Kamaitachi no Jutsu, Wind Release, Sickle Weasel Technique. A large hurricane-like gale blasted forward and smashed into the forested area of the arena. This resulted in a large cloud of debris and smoke being thrown into the air. Eyeing the cloud carefully, Temari instantly sprang backwards when a tendril of shadow shot out from the smoke in her direction. A couple more leaps and the shadow seemed to be stretched to its limit, which she quickly marked in the dirt with the edge of her fan. Temari, above you! Hearing the warning from Kankuro, she looked up in shock to see a barrage of kunai falling towards her. Maneuvering her fan into a makeshift shield, she hid behind it as the kunai peppered the area around her. Feeling the impact stop, she peeked out to see her opponent slightly roughed up from her attack. Not bad, you managed to dodge that, though you did get some help, troublesome Shikamaru sighed as he rubbed the back of his neck. Temari narrowed her eyes as she reappraised the genin that stood before her. I need to stop underestimating him, it could cost me that match. What was that? I didn't think Shikamaru would put up such a good fight. Kurenai exclaimed in surprise. Yeah, the brat didn't strike me as much, Anko added in. To actually calculate the angle and strength required for the kunai to land in the spot he wanted, whilst distracting and guiding her to the spot using his shadow, incredible. You know Shikamaru-kun is great at planning strategies, so much so that I have never won a single game of shogi or go against him before, Asuma stated with a weird smile on his bearded face. You're speaking of a board game, this is a real battle, you know, Kurenai said, upset that he was not taking her seriously. It is said that those games originally had their roots as a device for tacticians to plan their wars with. So I guess you could say that Shikamaru has the making of a genius tactician, Asuma replied calmly, still nursing his expression as well as cigarette. Genius? We are talking about the same Shikamaru that had grades equal to that of Naruto in the academy, right? Well, he always claimed that it was too much trouble to fill in all the answers, so he chose to do those that required the least effort but still granted him a passing score. That always struck me as strange since he excelled at strategy games, so I had him take an IQ test in the guise of a game. So how was the result? Kurenai asked. Yeah, Beardy, don't keep us in suspense, Anko chimed in once again. He sure was a diamond in the rough, Asuma said, his expression finally morphing into a proud smile. He is a super genius with an IQ over 200. T200? Kurenai exclaimed in shock, as did several other eavesdroppers, while Anko just whistled in surprise. Just watch, I'm sure he will surprise us again. Deciding to take the match more seriously, the Suna Kunoichi fueled her technique with significantly more chakra than before and unleashed it with a shout. Futon, Kamaitachi no Jutsu, Wind Release, Sickle Weasel Technique. As the wall of roaring wind rushed towards him, Shikamaru drew a kunai and darted behind a tree trunk to endure the attack whilst removing his vest. Fumbling around for a moment as the attack started to settle down, he launched a handful of kunai at his opponent before darting towards another location and firing off another salvo. Temari leapt away as soon as the first wave of kunai flew in her direction, only to curse when the second salvo zoned in towards her landing spot. Analyzing her available options, she spun around and used her fan as a prop to vault over the spot as the kunai slammed harmlessly into the frame of the battle fan. Unfortunately, that was not the end as her eyes caught sight of the shadow making its way towards her once again. she calmed somewhat when she noticed that she was well behind the marked line in the dirt. What? To her shock, the shadow did not slow down and instead shot past the dirt line and towards the point where her fan connected to the ground. Without any choice, she chose to relinquish her main weapon and pushed herself off with a grimace when she noticed that her opponent had used the shadow cast by her fan to continue extending his reach. She found herself in the routine of leaping away again, something that she deeply hated as it made her look weak. Temari allowed herself to breathe a sigh of relief when the shadow once again thinned out and slowed to a stop, the point of which she marked with her foot. I see, you wasted time for the sun to shift position in the sky so as to extend the reach of your attack. Also forcing me to use my fan in such a manner that benefited you. I severely underestimated you, Temari grudgingly admitted. It's not over yet, the Nara genius replied cryptically. What do you mean dash? Her eyes widened when a black dot on the ground slowly expanded into a growing shadow. Springing backwards, she glanced up to see that her opponent had created a makeshift parachute using his vest, headband, and a kunai. Sweat dripped down his head as he focused on his technique. Shikamaru could feel himself tiring already but persevered as he pumped more chakra to increase the speed of his shadow and sighed in relief when he finally felt it catch hold of his opponent. Kagemain no Jutsu, Shadow Imitation Technique, success. TSK Temari clicked her teeth in annoyance, as she did not expect the technique to suddenly increase in speed. She felt the effects soon as she was forced to walk forward a few paces. Surrender, Shikamaru called out from across the arena. Noticing the fatigue in his tone as well as the expression on his face. Or what? It looks like you're going to run out of chakra soon. Or here he reached out, forcing her to do the same, and snatched at the empty air above him, though this was not the same for her, as she grabbed the makeshift parachute out of the air. I detonate this explosive tag in your hand. A brief scan of the object in her hand revealed that he was not bluffing. There was indeed a primed explosive tag adhered to the back of the vest. Realizing that she was defeated, Temari called out to the proctor. I forfeit. Sabaka no Temari forfeits this match. The winner is Nara Shikamaru, Genma announced, earning a roar of approval throughout the stadium. See, I told you that he would win, Ino pointed out to Chuji, who had dropped his chips in shock. No way. Yeah. Go Shikamaru, Ino cheered, though she was soon joined by a majority of the Konoha genin. Impressive, Naruto said as he eyed the lazy genius in a new light. As he stood in the center of the arena with the audience cheering his name, Shikamaru allowed a smile to form on his face as he placed his hands in his pocket and shuffled back towards the stairs. That wasn't so bad, though I still would rather be cloud watching. Genma shook his head with a smirk as he watched the lethargic genin, the one that nobody had any expectations of, turned out to be a real dark horse, I would say. Just as he was about to call out the next match, a slight surge of chakra usage followed by a tornado of leaves appeared in the center of the arena. As the technique died down, it revealed the figures of Hatake Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke standing back to back, though it looked rather comical due to the height difference between them. Name? Genma asked with a serious tone, though mainly just to annoy them. Uchiha Sasuke, he replied in his usual arrogant tone, though his wardrobe did change slightly. He had foregone his usual blue shirt, white shorts combo for a new set of clothes. A black high-collar tee with the Uchiha emblem displayed on the back. A pair of black shorts and bandages wrapped around both legs as well as his left arm. Kia! Sasuke-kun is finally here! Ino and Sakura shouted together, resulting in them butting heads again. You worked so hard for your victory, and she has already forgotten about you. Sorry, Shika, Chuji thought to himself, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips at the familiar sight of the two rivals. Told ya he would come, Naruto stated with a grin, arms crossed across his chest. Troublesome, Shikamaru added as he emerged from the stairwell, though a grin could be seen on his face. I would be lying if I said I wasn't excited for this match as well. Meanwhile, in the other part of the booth, the two elder Suna genin were watching their younger brother with unease. Gaara had a maniacal expression on his face the moment his black-haired opponent had appeared, a hand placed over his face as his breathing intensified. Don't worry, mother. I am going to kill him. I'm definitely going to kill him. Shit! I haven't seen Gaara like this in a long time, Temari cursed as she clenched her fists subconsciously. Hey Gaara, don't forget about the plan. Kankuro was cut off when his sister clamped her hand down hard over his mouth. Her voice whispered harshly into his ear before he could even utter a protest. Don't talk to Gaara right now unless you want to be killed. I'm going to kill him. Mother will be happy once I paint the sand with his blood. Gaara laughed aloud as he turned around and descended down the steps, his laughter echoing throughout the corridor. The two siblings could only glance at each other in worry. Sorry, are we late? Kakashi directed the question towards the annoyed-looking proctor, who was considering shooting his senban between the eyes of the elite jounin. Your tardiness seems to be rubbing off on your subordinates, Kakashi-senpai Genma drawled as he tilted his head in the direction of the stands. Your blonde-haired brat also arrived by the skin of his neck. A second more, and he would have been disqualified. Locating Naruto proved to be harder than he thought, though that could be because both members of Team 7 were looking for an obscenely bright orange jumpsuit. They soon managed to find him, and what they found gave them a shock. Naruto looked drastically different than when they had last saw him. Yeah, I was shocked too when he appeared. Apparently he did a lot of growing up over the month. Defeated the Hyuga prodigy in a straight-up taijutsu fight. Genma smirked when he noticed that the usually laid-back man bolted up right upon hearing that. Even the resident Uchiha prodigy snapped his head over. What did you just say? Naruto managed to defeat Hyuga Neji, a prodigy in the Juken, gentle fist, style of combat, in a taijutsu-only fight? Kakashi looked absolutely stunned at the information, not to say the genin accompanying him was any different. The dobe? He managed to defeat Neji in a taijutsu fight? Sasuke asked in disbelief, his eyes traveling from the proctor to the stands and back again. Would you like me to repeat it again? Uzumaki Naruto completely dominated Hyuga Neji in an entirely one-sided fight. It doesn't get more detailed than that. Unless you would like me to submit a report on the step-by-step beatdown he delivered as well as the number of bones broken? That won't be needed. Kakashi replied quickly as could sense the growing annoyance within his fellow shinobi. So I take it that Sasuke here hasn't been disqualified yet? Fortunately he was not, though his tardiness will weigh heavily on his chances at promoting to the rank of Chunin, Genma stated. What? They can't do that. Needless to say, the Uchiha progeny was less than pleased. Not happy with the result? Take it up with Hokage-sama. It was his decision. Or maybe Genma paused as he glared at the genin in front of him, taking note that the boy was taking an aggressive stance against a superior. Try being on time. That's fine, right, Sasuke? Kakashi said as he tried to ease the tension, though the grip he had on the shoulder of his genin tightened considerably. You just have to impress them even more during your fights. That shouldn't pose a problem to you now, right? His decision to target the famous pride of the Uchiha clan proved to be the correct course of action as the raven-haired genin scoffed and turned towards the darkened entrance corridor. A feeling of pure bloodlust seemed to flow out from its depths. That feeling soon revealed itself in the form of the son of the Yondaime Kazekage, Sabaku no Gaara. Hunching over slightly, Kakashi could not help but whisper one last statement of advice to his student. Do not underestimate this boy Sasuke. He is much stronger than anyone you have faced before. HN. And with that, the masked jounin instructor stepped back and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Genma felt a tingle of unease travel up his spine when he got a closer look at the expression on the Suna genin's face. It was the picture of a perfect poker face. Though that was not the disturbing part, it was the depravity and insanity that hid behind the soulless-looking eyes that troubled the man. The final fight of the quarterfinals between Uchiha Sasuke and Sabaku no Gaara is about to begin. Are both participants ready? Genma asked, earning 2 curt nods. Hajime. Taking to note whatever Kakashi had been drilling into him about his opponent over the past month, Sasuke immediately put some distance between him and his target through several leaps. Coming to a stop, he dipped his hand into his holster and withdrew several shuriken whilst eyeing up his opponent. So that's the sand that Kakashi was warning me about. Sasuke mused internally when he noticed the cloud of sand that emerged from the gourd strapped to his opponent. Time to test that defense of his. Flinging the handful of shuriken at his opponent, he kicked off from his position and started circling the perimeter of the stadium whilst launching projectiles from each angle. This did not seem to fluster the redhead in any way as his sand formed a protective wall between him and the projectiles, even those that came from a blind spot in his vision. So it's like some form of automatic defense. He doesn't even seem to be aware of the attacks, yet the sand blocks them effectively. Sasuke frowned when he noticed that the sand had started shifting into a clone, its hand clutching the shuriken that had been blocked. Responding in kind, the Uchiha air blazed through a series of hand seals before inhaling deeply and cupping a hand around his mouth. Katon, Gokaki no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique. Starting out as a small stream of fire that leapt to life from the mouth, the stream grew exponentially in a few seconds into a large fiery ball of death that hurtled towards the sand clone. Seeing the deadly comet approaching, Gaara threw up a hand and more sand flowed from his gourd to reinforce the sand construct. A loud explosion rang through the air as the two techniques collided, resulting in a cloud of black smoke that obscured vision. This proved to be part of his plan as Sasuke burst out from the cover of the smoke and delivered a powerful palm thrust into the chest of the sand clone, the force blowing the construct apart. Without missing a beat, he pressed his advantage by striking outward with a kunai he had hidden in his other hand. Although it was countered by a small shield of sand that intercepted the strike, Sasuke had already disappeared in a blur of speed and circled round to the back of his opponent. "That speed and posture," Guy said as he glanced at his self-proclaimed rival. "It's the same as Lee when he takes his weights off." "Yes, I've hammered into him the importance of speed in battle, especially against an opponent of this caliber. The Goken, strong fist, style of taijutsu has its basics in hitting hard and fast, so it was only natural that I had him learn some of the basics," Kakashi admitted as he watched the match intently. Lee was much faster and stronger, yet it did not triumph in the end against that genin. "I hope taijutsu was not the only thing that you taught him over this past month," Guy said in one of his rare serious moments. "Don't worry, I believe that Sasuke has not shown all of his tricks yet." Asuma turned around in his seat and looked at his masked companion. "Isn't that right, Kakashi?" I'm sorry, did you say something?" Asuma sighed in resignation at being the target of Kakashi's hip attitude. Turning back around and placing his attention back on the match seemed to be the only option left. Capitalizing on his newfound speed that threw off his opponent, Sasuke delivered a powerful right hook that connected solidly against the cheek of the red-haired boy. Stumbling back slightly, Gaara felt the thin layer of sand armor fall from around his face where the blow had landed. The maniacal grin resurfaced once again, eyes dilated in a turmoil of different emotions. "You hit me just like that boy before. You too will contribute as proof of my existence." Not wasting any time, Sasuke blurred forward in a display of speed that his opponent could not follow or react in time to. Bypassing the outer sand defenses with ease, the raven-haired boy landed a powerful kick to the gut, followed by lurching forward and grabbing hold of the sash that his opponent wore. A series of blows followed through, each of them impacting against the sand armor. Darting back to avoid a tendril of sand that tried to sneak under his guard, his Sharingan snapped to life and he proceeded to literally run circles around his opponent so fast that dust was being kicked up into the air. Gaara brought up his sand in an attempt to form a defensive line, but the moment a gap was spotted, Sasuke dashed in and delivered a powerful high kick that connected with the jaw of his opponent. Gaara flew backwards and landed in a crumpled heap, his sand armor falling apart due to its high rate of chakra consumption and repeated attempts at rebuilding it. Despite all this and the beating he had just been through, the redhead still kept up his insane grin as his sand swirled around him in an erratic manner. "Yes, mother will be pleased with your blood," Gaara muttered to himself as he pressed his hands together into a hand seal, causing all the sand to start collating around him. "Mother? What is this guy talking about?" Sasuke shook his head free of the errant thought, his jujitsu informing him of how densely packed the sand was with the chakra of his opponent. It must be some form of last resort defense. Deciding to catch his opponent before he could complete that technique of his, the Uchiha dashed forth with his maximum speed. Unfortunately, the sand had already formed into a dense sphere by the time he got close enough, skidding to a stop just as he was about to impale himself upon the spikes of sand that had suddenly jutted out from the surface of the sphere. Above the sphere, the remaining sand was formed into a floating eyeball that locked onto the form of the frowning Uchiha. "Shit, it's that jutsu," Kankuro cursed as he gripped the railing with clenched fists. "This is bad. Gaara has forgotten about the plan entirely." Temari groaned inside her head, her nervousness causing sweat to roll down her neck. "Damn. Once Gaara gets like this, there's no way to talk him out of it," the puppeteer whispered to his sister, who turned towards him and whispered back. "Does Gaara want to mess up the plan? What are we supposed to do in this situation?" Unknown to both of them, Naruto frowned when he picked up on their conversation through the use of boosting his sense of hearing via the Force. His mind already trying to piece together the pieces of the puzzle that he had gathered, though he noted that Shino had picked up on the last bit of conversation as well. Back on the field, Sasuke cursed as he failed to find any point of weakness through his various attempts at striking it. He had tried taijutsu, ninjutsu, and even a couple of exploding notes, but nothing seemed to put a dent into that sphere. "Looks like he is going to just sit there until I tire myself out. Well, looks like it's the perfect time to use my new jutsu since it takes quite a bit of time to set up," Sasuke mused before turning around and running towards and then up the wall of the stadium. "Monkey, dragon, rat, bird, ox, snake, dog, tiger, monkey, now to focus it into my hand." He flashed through the hand seals before clutching the wrist of his left hand as lightning-natured chakra flickered to life. "No, Kakashi, don't tell me you taught him that jutsu," Guy asked suddenly as he glanced over at his masked rival. Sasuke needed a trump card to win against his opponent, an absolute attack to clash against the absolute defense. Kakashi replied, intent on justifying himself. Plus, the person who taught his own student how to open the Hashiman, 8 gates, shouldn't be questioning others on their teaching methods. TSK, so this is why you had been training him exclusively on his speed and taijutsu. Yup, Kakashi said with his patented eye smile. Utilizing the piercing power of lightning-natured chakra as well as the kinetic energy gained through his speed, you created your only original jutsu that was immediately labeled as an assassination technique due to its nature. With the screech generated by the lightning nature of the jutsu that sounds like 1,000 birds chasing after you, it was with this technique that you were able to cut through a bolt of lightning. Guy explained aloud for the benefit of those who had not seen the technique in action before, all of them watching closely as the Uchiha heir disappeared in a flash of lightning as he blasted towards his opponent. That technique is called Chidori, 1,000 birds. Sasuke smirked as he felt his hand sink straight through the hardened defenses of the sphere and pierce through the flesh of his opponent. He could feel the warm texture of blood that seeped out onto his hand. Though his smirk did not last long as he felt something unnatural grabbing onto his arm from his inside, his attempt to retrieve his arm resulted in failure, and panic started to seep in when he felt the grip starting to tighten. Running through his options, he calmed down and released a blast of lightning-natured chakra through his hand that allowed him to yank it free when the grip loosened. His eyes widened when he noticed that the tendril of sand that had gripped onto his arm had blue veins situated along its length. He stifled a gasp when he trailed it back up into the hole and saw a strange golden patterned eye glaring back at him. What the hell was that? He thought as he tried to calm down his breathing. The dense sphere of sand soon fell apart to reveal the insane visage of the red-haired Tsunagenin, a hand pressed tightly against his shoulder where blood could be seen soaking through the cloth and onto his hand. No way, Gaara was wounded! Kankuro exclaimed in shock. He managed to injure Gaara, undoing the cocoon before the transformation could complete. Temari bit her lower lip, worried for both herself as well as her brothers. Transformation, eh? Naruto mused mentally, silently observing the two siblings. Blood, it's my blood. Before the match could proceed any further, a curtain of feathers proceeded to fall over the stadium. Its effect revealed when multitudes of civilian and genin-level shinobi started falling asleep, unable to resist the sleep-inducing effects of the technique. Those that were well-versed in the arts of recognizing genjutsu or had accumulated enough experience over the years were quick to break its effect, just in time to see the Kage booth explode in a large cloud of smoke. Naruto managed to negate the effects of the genjutsu by channeling the power of the force to cleanse his body of the foreign chakra. He turned towards the prone figure of Shikamaru and kicked him roughly in the side. You can stop pretending, I know you're awake. Troublesome, the Nara mumbled as he accepted the helping hand up. The duo looked up just in time to see the figure of the Kazekage leap out from the smoke, his hand secured tightly around the throat of the elderly Sandaime Hokage. They were quickly pursued by several figures that looked like ANBU members as well as several other foreign shinobi. As if the current level of pandemonium was not enough, there were several sounds of explosions going off throughout the village before even more screaming started. Movements from several of the civilians that surrounded their portion of the stands drew their attention. The disguises were soon thrown off to reveal shinobi from both Sunagakure, hidden sand, as well as Otogakure, hidden sound. Taking a quick glance around, Naruto spotted that several of his classmates had managed to break the genjutsu, and that the two sand siblings had leapt down into the arena to assist their crazed younger brother. Well, it looks like we're being invaded, Naruto quipped as he turned to face the advancing enemy shinobi. Troublesome. Highest number of enemy taken down wins? Don't even think about it. Well, more for me then, Naruto roared as he leapt into the fray. Shouts of alarm rose through the ranks of Konohagakure shinobi when a portion of the high-rise stone wall that protected their village was blown apart. The debris sent sailing through the air crushed both friend and foe alike. Through the dust generated from the collapse of the wall, several large snake summons slithered their way through the gap created and proceeded to wreak havoc among the shinobi protecting their home. Despite their best efforts and coordinated combination techniques, the reptilian summons shrugged off the damage as if the attacks were nothing more than an irritation. Upon seeing how ineffective their tactics were proving to be, morale among the Konoha shinobi took a huge dent as the summons continued their rampage among the village unhindered. That is until a large magenta-colored toad with black markings adorned along its large body fell from the sky and crushed the midsection of one of the snake summons under its weight. Upon closer inspection, the toad was wearing a black kimono with a white sash, underneath which was a layer of mesh armor. In addition, the toad wielded a large Susumida in one hand and equally large Sakazuki-like shield in the other. Barely a second later, and another toad, this time colored two different shades of aquamarine with yellow eyes, landed on another snake summon, but this time turning its head into a bloody pulp. This toad had little on in terms of clothing besides the orange sash tied around the waist, it wielded a pair of giant katana that was currently sheathed on its back. "Good job, Gamaken, Gamma Hero!" A voice praised from atop the head of the magenta-colored toad, now revealed to be Gamaken. "Everyone look! It's Jiraiya-sama!" Upon this announcement, a round of reinvigorated cheers echoed throughout the ranks of the Konoha shinobi when they recognized the white-haired Sannin standing atop the magenta-colored toad's head. His face, usually set in a jovial or perverted expression, was set in stone and bellied the rage he held at the invasion forces that dared raise their hand against his home. Normally Hero alone would have been enough to deal with this threat, but I had just found out that the godson I thought I had killed was alive. I can't afford to be playing around now. I have to make sure he is safe. Jiraiya thought to himself as he leapt from the head of his summon, landing in the midst of the enemy forces. Alas, the bulk of the opponents were no higher than Chunin in strength, and their only advantage so far has been the sheer numbers they held along with the large reptile summons that had been provided by Orochimaru. With the white-haired Sannin inserted into the equation, the defending forces soon gained the advantage as Jiraiya completely decimated the opposing forces. Above their heads, another battle was waged between the gargantuan summons with the momentum going towards the weapon-wielding toads. With Naruto. As the toad-summoning Sannin was busy holding the line against the forces that had breached the west wall of the village, so too was our blonde-haired protagonist neck-deep in enemies that had breached the eastern wall. Standing alone in the middle of a crowded residential district, his eyes glancing left and right to confirm that he was indeed surrounded on all sides by Odo and Suna forces. Their tan and gray-themed uniforms actually blending in well with the buildings in the area, though it was of little issue to the blonde as he could sense their forced presences clearly. "Genin Uzumaki, Naruto here. I seem to have run into some invading forces near the eastern wall of the village," he whispered into the communication earpiece that he had procured from a deceased Konoha shinobi. "Troublesome. This is Genin Nara Shikamaru. I am leading a group of Genin shinobi in defense of the area around the hospital. Do you require assistance? We can dispatch a few to assist you in repelling the invaders." "That wasn't a call for help, I was just reporting the situation. In fact, I think this is the perfect chance to stretch my limbs. Keep your channel open and I'll contact you once I've cleared this sector." "Troublesome." Naruto closed the channel before the lazy genius could comment further, his stance still relaxed with hands by his side as he rolled his shoulders a few times before a cordial smile spread across his face as he addressed the enemy shinobi that had closed in around him. "I just have one thing to ask. Would anybody like to leave before we begin?" His answer came in the form of a hail of steel, kunai and shuriken launched from every which direction and formed a cage of deadly weaponry that seemed to guarantee death for anyone caught within its embrace. This did nothing to ruffle the feathers of the gray-clad shinobi, who merely took a deep breath before flinging his arms out wide with fingers splayed. Wisps of blue energy swirled around his body, moving upwards along his arms like a conduit and dispersing into the air around him. The expressions of the invading forces turned from anticipation into disbelief when they witnessed all of their projectiles suddenly come to a halt in midair, as if held there by some unseen apparition. His sandy blonde bangs cast an ominous shadow over his face, hiding his eyes and only revealed the grin that had stretched across his whiskered cheeks. "Looks like that's a no." Through some unheard command, the floating weapons all spun around and pointed back in the direction that they had originated from. Majority of the shinobi felt the blood drain from their faces when they correctly predicted the next course of action, quickly scrambling to safety just as Naruto sent out a pulse of energy that blasted the projectiles back towards their owners. Screams and shouts of pain echoed throughout the area as the deadly weaponry peppered the area, sinking hilt deep into either concrete or flesh. Without missing a beat, the force-wielding shinobi leapt into action before any of his opponents could recover from the wide-area attack that he had unleashed. Performing a flawless force-enhanced backflip onto the nearby rooftop, he unsheathed his katana in one fluid motion that removed the heads from two unsuspecting otonin. Landing lightly on his feet, he immediately dashed forward and set about relieving several shinobi off their heads and limbs. "Pull yourselves together. It's just one freaking kid, damn it." A large, burly-looking Chunin from Hokage growled as he hefted a large steel hammer above his head and charged straight into the conflict. Taking the advice to heart, majority of the remaining forces started to place themselves in positions of advantage. The futon, wind release, users from Sunagakure lining themselves along the rooftops where they had a better vantage point to unleash their techniques. The varied shinobi that made up Otogakure moved in to keep their target occupied. Naruto clicked his tongue in irritation as he noticed the opposing forces start to organize themselves. Unfortunately, he was unable to do anything about it as he was occupied with the unending onslaught of grunts and fodder. Slicing another otonin from shoulder to waist, he felt the force prickling the back of his mind, and he flung his arm backwards to unleash a devastating force push. The wall of force energy slammed into the unsuspecting duo that were attempting a sneak attack, bruising several ribs before launching them clear across the street into the wall of a building several feet away. Deciding to deal with the threat of several powerful wind-release users rather than the cannon fodder that consisted Orochimaru's army, he dug his heel into the dirt and spun around to release his katana like a buzzsaw. The deadly aerial instrument of death immediately claiming the life of the unprepared Suna Chunin who had just snapped open her battle fan by severing her head from her torso. He just lost his weapon, everyone focus on him now. Another Suna Chunin pointed out, earning multiple shouts of agreement before he saw their blonde-haired target had held out an empty palm skyward and performed an anti-clockwise motion with his fingers. Hearing sounds of pain and anguish coming from his left flank, the aforementioned Chunin barely had enough time to register that the spinning katana had somehow changed direction mid-flight before it bifurcated him vertically down the middle. Not to say the other deaths were not as gruesome, as the majority of the Suna platoon had been fatally maimed in one form or the other. The sight of their better-trained allies being taken down dealt a serious blow to the morale of the Otogekyu shinobi, many of whom had already started to back away from the gray-clad genin that stood in the middle of the blood-stained street. The genin who had systematically taken down almost two-thirds of their entire platoon now had his arm outstretched and snatched his katana out of midair by the handle. What is with this kid? He's even stronger than the Sound 4. Let's get out of her before we get killed as well. I didn't sign up for this. He's a monster, a fucking monster. Naruto merely flicked his katana to the side, allowing the blood to splatter off the blade before calmly sheathing it. He watched as the remaining forces scrambled away from him and back towards the breach they had entered through the wall. Taking a single step forward, he let the force gently ebb from his system. Immediately he felt the bile rushing up his throat and emptied the contents of his stomach onto the ground next to him, his eyes darting around the blood-stained battlefield as his nose picked up the heavy scent of copper in the air. Looks like the force trance only holds back the symptoms until the technique is deactivated. Naruto dry-heaved a few more times before wiping his mouth against the back of his sleeves. The next technique that I would like to impart to you is a more advanced form of meditation. It is known as the force trance. For a period of time, the user will heighten their sense of awareness as well as reining in their emotions, thus creating a better state of mind during intense combat situations. However, do take note that you would have to be perfectly still to enter the trance, and it is not something that can be triggered during mid-combat. Taking a moment to clear his mind of the sudden flashback, he composed himself before pressing a hand to his communications device and reopened the channel to his peers that had been defending the hospital. Uzumaki Naruto, reporting that the invaders along the eastern wall have been repelled. All sectors cleared. He had stretched out his force sense to cover a wide portion of the eastern part of the village, dispatching several squads of Kage Bunshins, shadow clones, to mop up the survivors that had yet to flee the scene. Troublesome. We have repelled several waves of invaders and it finally looks like things are starting to calm down on our end. Shikamaru paused as the blonde heard sounds of metal clashing against metal happened in the background. Sounds real calm over there, Naruto stated sarcastically, earning a quick snort of amusement from the pineapple-haired boy. I can make it there in about 5 minutes at maximum speed. Actually, I think your skills might be needed elsewhere. A couple minutes ago, Kakashi-sensei dropped in and tasked Shino with tracking down the trio of Sand siblings from the tournament. Both Sasuke and Sakura were with him. He assigned them to go with Shino after he had summoned a ninja hound to pick up the scent trail. Gaara, do you know which direction they were headed? Luck seems to be on your side. Last I saw of them, they were headed in your general direction. Probably trying to escape through the less defended route, which happens to be the eastern wall. Roger that. Using a series of force-enhanced leaps and acrobatic maneuvers, he had repositioned himself upon the top of the eastern wall. Making sure that there were no enemies in his immediate vicinity, he crouched down onto a knee and spread his force sense out into the surrounding forests. It did not take long, as apparently the Suna Genin had not managed to get much distance before they had been cut off by their pursuit party. It looked like 2 of them had stayed behind to fight as the other 2 pairs resumed the chase, only to stop at a further location to face off against each other. Deciding not to waste any more time, the blonde-haired shinobi utilized the surface walking technique to sprint down the outer wall before gaining enough momentum to shoot himself off the wall and into the forest. Using the branches as steps, he fired small bursts of force energy through the muscles in his legs every time he launched himself off a branch. Soon enough he had arrived at the first location, which appeared to be going in the favor of the bug-wielding clan heir, as he had easily defeated the puppeteer by severing the chakra strings with his Kikaichu. Shino, having noticed his presence, gave an almost undetected nod in the direction of the other fight. He gave a terse nod in return before resuming his dash towards a large man-made clearing in the distance, probably from the wide area futon ninjutsu that the fan-wielding kunoichi uses. Arriving in the clearing, he quickly took stock of the situation. The blonde Suna Kunoichi appeared to have been knocked unconscious through blunt force trauma, her body laying awkwardly against a tree stump and a trail of blood leaked from the corner of her lips. His pink-haired teammate was being pinned to a tree trunk by a large beast-like hand composed of sand and what looked like blue pulsating veins. His raven-haired teammate was panting rather heavily but was otherwise uninjured. The Uchiha narrowed his eyes but gave a sigh of relief when he noticed the new arrival. Better late than never, Adobe. You look like shit, team bastard. Well, this guy isn't normal, he just keeps taking hits and gets up angrier and more dangerous. Sasuke huffed as he rolled his shoulder, wincing slightly at the pain generated from that small amount of movement. Plus, I couldn't even make a tactical retreat to recover with him holding Sakura hostage over there. I can create several clones to free Sakura, but we have to keep him busy enough not to notice. Sasuke seemed surprised at the change in the thought process of his blonde-haired teammate, though it was definitely a pleasant surprise. He has been slowly assimilating more sand onto his body ever since the start of the fight. I'm not too sure what is it for, but I'm also pretty sure I don't want to find out. The Uchiha pointed out the abnormal sand lumps that made up about 50% of the red-haired genin, including covering half his face and replacing one of his arms. If we can keep his rage centered on us, my clones would be able to sneak in and free Sakura from the sand bindings. Looks like it's time for you to put those flashy katan ninjutsu of yours to use. Looks like we finally agree upon something. Sasuke replied with a smirk, his hands already flashing through several familiar hand seals. Katan, Gokaki no Jutsu, Fire Release, Grand Fireball Technique. Utilizing the large explosion and subsequent smokescreen as cover, Naruto formed several shadow clones and sent them off into the forest to bide their time. Not stopping there, he created a dozen more doppelgangers to dash into the smokescreen to engage the sand-wielding redhead. His rival was not idle either, taking to the trees and launching a barrage of kunai into the smoke ahead of the charging clones. The sound of the deadly projectiles sinking into flesh went unheard as the smoke cleared to reveal that the target had used his sand construct arm to block them. The shadow clones fanned out as the surface of the arm construct rippled and fired off waves of high-velocity sand projectiles, each one capable of putting a large dent into a thick tree trunk. Closing in from their respective sides, the clones moved in sync to engage the redhead in a fast-paced taijutsu battle that fell to Naruto's advantage due to his opponent obviously not being trained significantly in close-quarters combat. Though it did not make it any easier when it was revealed that the armor of sand around his punching bag consistently absorbed the majority of the blows. Gaara was grinning maniacally as he faced off against two powerful foes. Both of them were strong enough to prove his worth 1,000 times over if he managed to kill them. His remaining visible eye dilated further as he swung his non-construct arm out in a wide sweep, unleashing a rolling wave of sand that dispelled a portion of the clones and forced the others to retreat. Yes, mother will have your blood. His deranged battle cry marked the beginning of his offensive, the redhead darting towards their position with sand projectiles firing out from the palm of his arm construct. To make matters more complicated, the sand that made up the construct started branching off into multiple tendrils as the owner closed in on their location. Sasuke was forced to rely on his Sharingan to slow down his perception of time while Naruto allowed the force to guide his body through the onslaught, both of them twisting and dodging in midair, and using the trees as springboards. Out of the corner of his eye, the blonde spotted his clones moving into position to free the pink-haired Kunoichi from her sand prison. Looking over at his rival, he sliced through several tendrils using a pair of kunai before landing on another tree branch to catch his breath. Sasuke, we need to close in on him. He holds too much advantage in a long-range battle, not to mention he barely seems winded while we are both quickly losing stamina due to our previous fights. HN. Placing his fingers into a familiar cross-shaped hand seal, he spawned several dozen shadow clones around their position and had half of them perform the henge transformation to alter their appearance into the raven-haired Uchiha. The clones will be used as a distraction for us to close in. When dispelled, they erupt in a cloud of smoke that should momentarily blind him. We can use those moments to coordinate our attacks, hopefully enough to inflict some damage on him. Naruto explained, getting a nod of acknowledgement. Through an unspoken command, the shadow clones moved in on their target in several different waves with the original duo weaving in between the copies. Gaara had started drooling at the challenge his prey was putting up. More sand had started creeping up his body and had transformed about 75% into a miniature sand monster. The only part left uncovered was the right half of his face and both of his feet. The large arm constructs proved to be quite bothersome due to their wide sweeping area of attacks and the fact that none of the damage applied to them transferred back to the owner. There had been multiple opportunities that the pair had taken to strike at the insane redhead, be it with either katan jutsu, projectiles, or katana. However, even with his eyesight obscured by the smoke, that sand defense always seemed to be in the right place at the right time to intercept all of their attempts. Leaping back after yet another failed attempt to strike down their target, Naruto felt a tingle in his mind that signified that the original objective had been completed. Sakura has been successfully retrieved, he whispered to his rival beside him. Good, now what are we supposed to do about him? Sasuke groaned in annoyance when he saw another batch of clones crushed under a wave of sand. We're running out of time, options and clones, Naruto muttered to himself, silently weighing the pros and cons of revealing his new powers to his so-called rival. Unfortunately, he did not have much time to think, nor did he have any cards left to play Sasuke during the month-long training before the finals. I unlocked a Kekkai Genkai of some sorts. It should give you an opening to take down this punk. While shocked that his teammate, the dead last of the academy, had acquired a Kekkai Genkai of all things, Sasuke knew that it was not the time nor the place to question him about it. I can hold him still for a few seconds, maybe 10 at tops. Use that opportunity to get in close and take him out. HN. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he once again opened his body as a conduit for the force to flow through. Faint wisps of translucent blue energy drifted around his body. His eyes closed momentarily before snapping open again to reveal an ethereal glow behind his already usually clear cerulean blue eyes. Go. One word was all that was needed as the remaining clones darted forward first, using their presence to distract the tendrils of sand as well as drawing fire from the sand projectiles. Sasuke, with Sharingan blazing in his sockets, weaved through the chaos of clones, tendrils and projectiles as he closed in on the grinning redhead. Said redhead could only cackle as he stomped heavily on the ground, summoning a tidal wave of sand that crushed everything in its path as it surged forward. Upon seeing this, Naruto performed a somersault over his rival and landed in front of him with both hands placed back to back and palms facing outwards. Channeling the force through his body, he flexed his muscles as if trying to force open a pair of jammed doors. Grunting from the effort, he let out a roar as he flung his arms out wide and ripped the large volume of sand apart right down the middle, revealing a straight path down the middle to the shocked visage of their opponent, whom was still trying to comprehend how the blonde had managed to rip the control of his sand from him. With the advantage granted to him by the shock factor, Sasuke wasted no time in closing in on the redhead and thrusting his kunai straight into the jugular of his target. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be, as a single tendril of sand had managed to snag his wrist right as he was about to plunge it in, the tip of the blade drawing only a small rivulet of blood from its target. Realizing that he was trapped, he quickly discharged a burst of lightning-natured chakra through his hand to free himself from the tendril. His hands forming several hand seals as he leapt backwards, taking a deep breath, he cupped a hand around his mouth. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Fire Technique. A dozen fireballs, each the size of a head, descended towards their target in large sweeping arcs like a group of screeching eagles. Without respite, each attack struck their mark with barely a second interval between. Black smog obscured the area where the bombardment had landed. The sound of labored breathing could be heard from ground zero. Blood Mother demands more blood. I will have your blood. Faster than they could follow, a large tail-like construct shot forth from the smog and ensnared the raven-haired Uchiha within its grasp. Rearing back, the tail launched its victim straight into the trunk of a nearby tree, shattering it and sending him tumbling further into another tree. Futon, Rankuden, Wind Release, Drilling Air Bullet. Naruto felt his eyes widen when he realized that the attack was headed straight for his downed teammate. Reaching out with the force, he grasped hold of the body and performed a powerful tugging motion that pulled the body through the air towards him. Catching the airborne male, he groaned in annoyance when he noticed that he had already been rendered unconscious from the previous attack. Feeling his force sense warning him of impending danger, he performed a perfect backflip just as both arm constructs slammed down onto his previous position. Creating a clone, he passed the unconscious Uchiha into its arms and ordered it to retreat to a safe distance. Turning around, he saw that smog had cleared to reveal Gaara, fully encased in sand and his hands placed together in a ram hand seal. Tanuki Nairi no Jutsu, Feigning Sleep Technique. A feeling of dread washed over the young Uzumaki as he noticed a large amount of sand converging towards the suddenly asleep redhead. The sand kept flowing upwards and forming into a large tanuki with its eyes closed. Though it did not stay that way for long, as they soon snapped open, revealing that the sclera of its eyes were black with yellow irises and pupils that each takes the shape of a black four-pointed star with 4 black dots around it. I'm free, baby! The glee-filled cry of the one-tailed Biju echoed throughout the forest, prompting the blonde to heave a deep sigh. Fuck my life. Within the streets of Konohagakure. During the initial fallout from the invasion, Hyuga Hayashi had entrusted the safety of his youngest daughter to 2 of his personal bodyguard before moving off to engage against the enemy forces. Things had been proceeding smoothly, as the two highly trained Hyuga guards had systematically taken down all of the enemy shinobi that had managed to cross their path. Alas, things did not always go according to plan, as proven when the secondary round of explosives that had been hidden within the village detonated. The ensuing explosion had taken out both of the guards, though she was unsure whether they were dead or merely unconscious. Regardless of that, the fact was that both of the bodies were trapped under a pile of rubble that she would not be able to move anytime soon. Memorizing the layout of the street that she was in, Hanabi made a decision to move in the direction of the Hyuga estate. Unfortunately, what she failed to rationalize due to her inexperience was that one of the invading forces belonged to Orochimaru of the Sannin, a highly disturbed individual with a desire for knowledge. The snake-summoning Sannin was no fool. He knew that the invasion was a perfect time to snag some Kekkai Genkai wielders from his home village. True to this, he had assigned different squads to scout out the areas that the clans resided in. It was one such squad that the young Hyuga had managed to run into when they dropped down around her from above, 2 in the front and 2 in the back to cut off her escape route. Falling back into the traditional Juken stance that had been drilled into her from a young age, the veins bulged around her eyes as she activated her Byakugan. "Well, looks like our patience has finally paid off," the first Otonin in front said as he popped his neck a few times. A Hyuga, a main branch one at that the kunoichi of the pair added on. "Orochimaru-sama will be pleased if we bring this catch before him," one of the duo behind her started. "We will definitely be rewarded greatly for this," his partner finished for him. Their words sent chills up her spine. She definitely did not want to be within the clutches of the traitorous Sannin. Despite her young age, she had already heard multiple tales and rumors about how he performed disgusting and illegal experiments while he had been inside the village. Not wanting to find out the hard way if those rumors were true, she channeled the necessary amount of chakra into her fingertips while slowly easing the tension from her body. "Looks like the little girl wants to fight. How cute. Get her." With the near-perfect 360-degree vision given to her by her Kekkai Genkai, she noticed the pair behind had lunged at her in an attempt to restrain her movement. A smirk made its way onto her face as she easily used her excellent chakra control to kick off the wall beside her, flipping over both shinobi and landing a series of strikes against their shoulders. "Why, that bitch disabled my arms." "Mine too." "Grr fools. You still have legs, right? It's just a little girl." The kunoichi snarled, prompting both of her teammates to glance at each other before charging towards the young heiress again. Whether it was through sheer luck or an insane amount of cockiness, the group that had ambushed her had chosen a rather enclosed alleyway, and it proved to be their undoing. It was sheer stupidity to engage a Hyuga within such a confined space, especially one that had been trained since a young age by the clan head of the family himself. Using this to her advantage, Hanabi closed in against her opponents so that they could not lash out with their legs. Fingertips blazing with chakra, she wasted no movement as her hands fluidly moved through the paces of the Juken to seal off their tenketsu as well as heavily bruising their internal organs. She finished off her assault with a well-timed backflip that connected her heels with their jaws, instantly knocking both of them out. Seeing 2 of her teammates knocked out, the kunoichi could only slap a palm to her face and growled. "If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Careful, Abaya, she is stronger than she looks." The Otonin that had first spoken cautioned, drawing a tanto from its sheath on his back. Hanabi groaned mentally. Her opponents had stopped underestimating her, and one of them had even pulled a close-ranged weapon. Something that she was not yet as well versed in fighting, opposed to the usual hand-to-hand combat drills and spars that she had on a daily basis. Without a choice, she widened her stance and settled into a more relaxed form of the Juken that revolved around counterattacking. It was safer to have them close in on her than the other way around, plus she noted that the female of the duo seemed to have a temper. "Really? 4 grown Otogekure ninjas having a problem against little old me?" Hanabi taunted, a grin threatening to stretch across her face when she saw the effect it was having on the kunoichi. "Man, your village must have some pretty poor standards." "Ibaya, don't let her rile you up." The male gripped his partner's shoulder, only for her to roughly shrug it off. "Plus you could have helped your buddies there, yet all you did was watch as they got beaten up by a little girl. Excellent leadership skills." She mocked further by performing a clapping motion with her hands. "Bitch," Ibaya growled lowly, a rather prominent twitch making itself known on her forehead. "I mean, if this is what passes off as skill in your village, your leader must be pretty shitty himself." "Nobody insults Orochimaru-sama." Without missing a beat, Hanabi stepped forward and into the guard of the enraged kunoichi that had leapt at her. Her left hand brushing a wild haymaker aside, she delivered a crushing palm thrust into her sternum followed by a quick series of finger strikes that disabled her respiratory system. However, due to the position of her target, it obscured her vision of her secondary target, who had ruthlessly thrust his tanto through his gasping teammate. Hanabi grimaced slightly and thanked whatever gods existed for the short length of the blade, having only managed to inflict a small incision along her stomach area. Stumbling back slightly, her eyes widened in alarm when she realized that her limbs felt as if they were moving through a thick viscous fluid. Don't forget that we were part of a capture squad. My weapon is laced with a quick-acting paralyzing venom from one of Orochimaru-sama's snake summons. Taking the time to glance at his fallen comrades, he shrugged uncaringly. Looks like the reward's all mine then. Biting her lower lip, she struggled to stay on her feet even as all feeling abandoned them, and she crumpled onto the floor. Using what little motor control she had left, the young Hyuga reached into the pouch of the fallen kunoichi beside her, and retrieved a single kunai that she flourished in her hands. I would recommend against resisting. I applied more than the needed amount of toxin onto the blade. Better safe than sorry, I always say, though with the way your body is trembling it might be too much to handle. Oh well, I just need your eyes anyway. The shinobi remarked offhandedly, his tanto easily slapping aside the kunai from her feeble grip. Seeing the man reaching for her, she could only close her eyes in resignation and despair. However, instead of whatever she had been expecting to happen, she felt a warm spray of liquid splash across her face. Cracking open her eyes an inch, they flew wide with shock when they registered the tip of the katana that protruded from her attacker's chest. The warm liquid on her face having been the blood that emerged from the exit wound, though it was not something she was concerned about. Following the blade back to its owner, she first noticed the familiar shade of blonde hair before the katana was withdrawn and the body collapsed without the support. Yo, fancy running into you again. The first thought on her mind was to immediately berate him for such a callous response in their situation. To her chagrin, she realized that the poison was preventing that as she felt her chest constrict and her breath come in short bursts. Naruto, or rather a shadow clone that he had earlier dispatched to run damage control around the village, had heard the tail end of the conversation and saw the small incision along her stomach. Dropping to his knees, he roughly tore apart the cloth around the area and pressed his lips against the cut. Working quickly, he tried his best to draw out as much of the residual poison as he could and at the same time using the force to bolster her body's systems. Despite the situation she was in, Hanabi could not help but flush heavily at the feeling of his lips pressed against the sensitive flesh of her abdominal area. A few seconds later, she could feel a drastic improvement as her breathing slowed down and a phantom tingling along the extremities of her limbs. You're lucky the boss created a large number of us to assist in securing the village. Oh, I'm a Kage Bunshin, shadow clone. The clone explained upon seeing her confused expression. Solid clones, isn't that chakra taxing? Hanabi rasped out as she struggled to stand, only to blush furiously when the clone scooped her up in a princess-style carry. Nope, the original has a ton of chakra and creating 100 barely even makes a dent in our chakra pool. Put me down, she fought in vain to free herself from its clutches. No can do, you're in no position to travel by yourself. I saw a group of Konohagakure shinobi escorting some civilians into a temporary shelter. I'll drop you off there, the clone said as he peeked around the corner to confirm that there were no more enemies, before taking to the rooftops. Baka. Hanabi could only huff as she allowed herself to relax in the grasp of the man that had saved her life. Eastern forests surrounding Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto was having a tough time as he dodged hails of sand shuriken, giant sand claws, as well as the occasional sweeping tail strike that threatened to knock him unconscious like it had his raven-haired teammate. He had depleted almost half of his remaining chakra by spamming shadow clones in hopes of drawing attention away from himself, though it only seemed to excite the demon as it continued its rampage in the direction of Konoha. Shikaku-sama smash. Naruto could not help the sweat drop that formed when he saw the insane Tanuki Biju level another section of the forest in its attempt to crush another group of unfortunate shadow clones. The bright side was that the beast was easily distracted and seemed more interested in creating chaos and mayhem than helping out with the invasion. The downside was that he had absolutely no idea how to subdue it. TSK, wake the host up. Why? It's me, you idiot. QB? No, it's the Easter Bunny. Of course it's me, you ignorant ninja human. You haven't spoken a single word since the incident in the chasm. Humph, I merely had nothing to say to you at that time, but I will not stand by as my jailer is beaten by that stupid Tanuki. As my Jinchuriki, you represent me. If that idiot defeats you, then I would be made the laughing stock of all the other Biju. Creating another batch of clones to distract the giant sand demon, Naruto hoped back into the safety of the forest as the new batch of clones engaged in combat. So I just wake Gaara up? Just like that? From what I've seen, Shikaku only gains control when his host is unconscious. So if you manage to awaken the host from his slumber, he would be dragged back into the seal. A nice solid hit would be enough to dispel the sleeping technique. Easier said than done, Naruto cursed aloud when he saw that the slumbering redhead was waist deep in the sand that made up the head of the rampaging Biju. Thanks anyway. The Kyuubi snorted in acknowledgement as it placed its head back onto its front paws, though it kept an eye and ear open to the proceedings of the match that was happening outside of its prison. Also, it allowed a sliver of its power to trickle through the seal to bolster his Jinchuriki's chakra reserves, though he would vehemently deny it if questioned. Feeling a fresh surge of power flow through his chakra coils, he sent another mental nod of thanks to the fox sealed within his gut, as it was obvious where the boost had come from. Bracing himself, he dashed out of the woods just as the last of his shadow clones was decimated by a larger version of the futon ninjutsu that Gaara had used earlier. You finally revealed yourself. Shikaku-sama will have the pleasure of turning your bones into dust. Placing his fingers into a cross-shaped seal again, he spawned a few dozen clones to distract the demon. Clones again, Shikaku-sama tires off your antics. The Biju roared before it drew a deep breath. Futon, Mugen Saijin Daitapa, Wind Release, Infinite Sand Cloud Great Breakthrough. From its large gaping maw, a large amount of compressed air and sand shot out to create a sandstorm that blanketed the entire area in front of the attack. The force behind the attack combined with the sand particles dispelled the majority of the clones that had been caught within the attack. Only a handful remained that had taken shelter behind some uprooted tree trunks. Shikaku did not hesitate in pressing the attack as it lumbered forward, arms shooting forward in an overhead blow to crush the hiding clones that had scattered just before the impact. Stay still so that Shikaku-sama may crush you. How about Shikaku-sama shut the fuck up, Naruto deadpanned as he and another shadow clone leapt out from the foliage of the surrounding trees and unleashed a volley of kunai at the face of the Biju, a sizzling paper bomb attached to the ring of each of those kunai as a surprise. You will pay for your insolence. Shikaku roared in rage as it stumbled back slightly from the explosion going off in its face, though it had managed to get an arm up in time to prevent the blast from reaching its host. Though this proved to be the opening that he needed, the arm and smoke generated from the explosion being enough to obscure the eyesight of the giant tanuki. Using his shadow clone as a platform, Naruto blasted off with a powerful force-enhanced leap that landed him directly on the other arm of the demon. With the same principle that is applied to the water-walking exercise, the blonde moved quickly up along the shifting sands that consisted of the arm. Tendrils burst forth from the arm in multiple areas, attempting to dislodge the intruder from its body, but the blonde used his force senses to either dodge or slice through the offending obstacles. Get off me! The one-tailed Biju had caught onto his plan and sought to crush the genin using its free hand, though the blonde had calculated this within his plans and leapt upwards to meet the descending palm. Twisting his body in midair, he managed to squeeze through the gaps between the pudgy sand fingers and bury the blade of his katana into the back of the hand. Without losing any momentum, he swung himself up onto the handle and kicked off again. Time to wake the fuck. Rocketing straight past the snout of the Biju, he cocked his fist back and delivered a powerful uppercut straight into the jaw of the slumbering redhead. Up. No! The decisive blow caused the feigned sleep technique to dispel, forcing the Tanuki demon back into its seal and causing the large sand-constructed body to fall apart. Though Naruto was not done as he twisted in midair once again and slammed a force-enhanced fist into his opponent's face, sending him tumbling back to the ground. Landing lightly on the balls of his feet, the blonde retrieved his fallen katana from a nearby pile of sand before placing the sharpened edge of the blade against the neck of the defeated redhead. How are you so strong? I used to believe that someone could only become truly strong when they had people that were precious to protect, but for people like us we're alone, true, but killing everyone isn't going to prove anything. I've decided to get stronger to prove all of them wrong, stronger than all of the shinobi in the past, present and future. Hopefully by then, I will have discovered something precious that I want to protect with my power. Naruto paused as he picked up some scuffling sounds. Looking up, he noticed that the fan-wielding kunoichi and puppeteer shinobi had moved into flanking positions. You're lucky you have siblings that have stood by you through thick and thin. You should treasure those feelings and use them to grow stronger. Strong enough to defend them against anything that would dare harm them, the ultimate shield against your foes. Temari, Kankuro, I'm sorry. Gaara whispered after allowing the words to sink in, his voice barely audible but rang as clear as crystal through the empty clearing. No worries, I'm still your older brother after all, Kankuro stated as he hefted his younger brother up, supporting him with his shoulder as Temari moved in to support the other side. Let's go home, she whispered, voice cracking slightly as she reined in her tears at finally having her little brother back. The trio of siblings cast one glance back at the stationary blonde-haired Konoha genin, who simply sheathed his katana and gestured for them to scram before reinforcements arrived. Uzumaki Naruto. I will remember your words, nothing less than the best. Gaara threw one last parting quote over his shoulder as they disappeared into the forests. Of course, that's a promise. He held out a clenched fist. A smirk appeared on his face for a second before it soon gave way in the form of a sigh of exhaustion. By the way, QB. No need to thank me, Neji. No, I just wanted to say that you kinda look like the Easter bunny with those ears. Walking steadily back into the woods, the blonde collapsed with his back against a fallen trunk. Now if nobody needs me, I think I'll faint now. Unknown to the now unconscious blonde, a certain white-haired Sannin had managed to catch the end of his battle against the Suna Jinchuriki and had a proud smile stretched across his face. Jumping down from the branch of a nearby tree, he scooped the body of his snoring godson up into his arms and darted back in the direction of Konoha. Hopefully his clones would be done wiping up the remnants of the invasion forces by the time he got back. He was not in the mood to deal with annoyances. Naruto, I'll make it up to you. I promise. Beep. 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 Where am I? A pair of eyes cracked open to survey their surroundings, immediately taking note of the multiple machines that he was hooked up to. Looking down at himself, a grimace stretched across his face when he noticed the amount of bandages that his body was wrapped in. Tilting his head to the side, he looked out the window to see that the sun was already high up in the sky. Someone must have found me after the battle and brought me to the hospital, Naruto concluded as he allowed his eyes to briefly flicker to the corners of the room where he felt two different presences. What happened after I was knocked out? And yes, I'm talking to you two hiding in the corners of my room. He called out. The two presences flared slightly in surprise from being detected by Genin. A few seconds passed before one of them seemed to vanish from the room. The second person faded into existence just a second later to reveal an ANBU member. It was a female agent. She had straight purple hair that fell to her mid-back and on her face was her mask. A mask that the blonde was familiar with. Nico-san? Oh? Whatever happened to Nico-chan? Naruto frowned slightly. Her voice, though light-hearted in nature, seemed to be wavering in certain places. Not to mention that her forced presence was tinged with layers of sorrow and anger. He was easily able to sense these things due to his sense being bolstered by the QB. Despite wanting to question her, he could also sense that she did not want to converse about whatever it was that was bothering her. I'm no longer a kid, you have to earn the right for me to address you in such a familiar manner. Naruto replied, the words, though seemingly harsh, were delivered in a joking manner. I can see that. I was watching your match from the Kage booth. Defeating a Hyuga in Taijutsu, you've certainly grown stronger than the noisy little kid I used to guard. She moved as she spoke, crossing the room and settling down in the chair by his bedside. Not meaning to sound rude, but... I understand, we can catch up another time. She cleared her throat before regaling the events that happened while he was busy fighting Shikaku, and while he was unconscious. When the invasion started, Orochimaru revealed himself as having masqueraded as the fourth Kazekage. The original having been killed by himself a week before the Chunin exams. Sandaime-sama was caught by surprise and dragged away by Orochimaru. My squad made to give chase but were intercepted by several Otogekyu shinobi. By the time we had disposed of them, Sandaime-sama had already been trapped with Orochimaru within an advanced barrier that burnt everything it came in contact with. GG, he didn't survive, did he? Hi. Sandaime-sama fought valiantly, but he was already way past his prime as well as outnumbered when Orochimaru used the forbidden technique Kuchios, Edo Tensei, summoning, impure world resurrection, and summoned the souls of the Shodaime and Nidaime Hokages to fight alongside him. Thankfully, it appeared the technique was not complete as both the deceased Hokages were not displaying the strength that cemented them as legendary shinobi. Sandaime-sama eventually managed to get the upper hand and used the Shiki Fujin, dead demon consuming seal, to seal away his predecessors along with Orochimaru's arms. I see. Naruto felt conflicted at the death of the person who he had believed to be a surrogate grandfather, something that his new mindset did not agree with. While he had always been nice to me and bought me lunch on several occasions, he also lied to me and kept me in the dark about the QB. What else could he have been hiding from me? Without the use of his arms, Orochimaru was forced to retreat, and we gave chase in an attempt to strike him down while he was severely weakened. Unfortunately, he had a contingency plan in place, having his guards activate some hidden signal, and a few seconds later they were reverse summoned away. Having no other choice, part of my squad returned to secure Sandaime-sama's body while the rest ran damage control in the streets. So the invasion is over? How long have I been unconscious? Yes, the last of the invading forces were either driven off, captured, or killed. You have been unconscious for an entire day, ever since Jiraiya-sama found you in the forest after you had defeated the Ichibi, One Tail, and its Jinchuriki. A rather impressive feat for a young genin such as yourself. even seasoned jounin would have had a hard time against a biju-tailed beast. Naruto frowned slightly at the mention of the white-haired toad Chunin, but that disappeared in favor of an embarrassed blush at the praise. It wasn't much. Sasuke helped wear him down, and even Kyuubi helped out by giving me some chakra. The cat-masked Anbu quirked an eyebrow, not that he could see, upon the mention of the beast sealed within him. You are on talking terms with the Kyuubi? We have an understanding. No, we don't, meatbag. Are you still upset about the rabbit ear thing? I will disembowel you and hang you from your own entrails. Feelings mutual. So if Sandaime is dead, who is the new Hokage? A new Hokage had yet to be selected, though several candidates have been put forth. One of them was Jiraiya-sama, though I heard he turned it down due to several reasons. She replied. Good, can't imagine the fucking pervert, as Hokage Naruto muttered to himself, though it was still loud enough for the ANBU to pick up. Did something happen between you and Jiraiya-sama? I recall that he was supposed to have been training you before the finals of the Chunin examinations. Instead, I saw him hanging around the red light district on an almost daily basis. Her tone conveyed her disgust at the famous Sannin and his preferred pastimes. Seeing no harm in letting his ex-bodyguard know, he spilled the beans on how the legendary Toad Sannin of Konohagakure no Sato had kicked him down the endless chasm in hopes of him drawing out the Kyuubi's chakra. Needless to say, the purple-haired ANBU member felt her respect for the white-haired Sannin take a serious hit after what she had heard. I can't believe Jiraiya-sama would do that. You could have died. How did you even survive that drop? Kyuubi is a real asshole when he wants to be. He knew that my body would be able to survive the fall, so he purposefully held back his chakra until I went splat against the ground. Only then did he start pumping his chakra through my system to heal me. Hurt like a bitch though. His current injuries were nothing compared to the pain of having almost all the bones in your body pulverized. Say if there is no Hokage, then who did the other ANBU disappear to inform? He went to inform your doctor as well as fetch Jiraiya-sama, who had requested to be informed immediately upon your awakening. As soon as the words left her mouth, the door to the room swung open and a middle-aged woman entered, followed by the tall, imposing form of the Gamma Sannin of Konoha. The woman was dressed in green hospital scrubs that were splattered with blood, probably from whatever patients that she had been operating on. Naruto-kun, glad to see that you're awake. Her voice clearly conveyed the fatigue of having been working nonstop since the end of the invasion, the ANBU moving out of the way as she walked over to inspect the medical equipment. Ayakoro-san, it's been a while since we last met. Naruto smiled at the tired-looking woman. She was his personal doctor that was assigned to him by the deceased Sandaime. Humph, that's because you always skip your regular health checkups, Mr. I hate hospitals databeo. Ayakoro smirked in amusement when she noticed the blonde blush in embarrassment. I would like to apologize about that. I promise I will attend my future health screenings, Naruto said, much to the surprise of everyone who knew how much said blonde hated hospitals. I need to know if the Force had changed anything about my body. Much as I loathe to do it, I will probably have to place Ayakoro-san under a mind trick so that she will not inform anybody if there are changes. Looks like someone did some growing up since I last saw him. Her statement fell short, as she frowned suddenly while scrutinizing the report clipped to the front of his bed. Is there something wrong? Naruto asked neutrally, though he was sweating up a storm on the inside. Shit, I had hoped that the standard life support systems would not be able to pick up anything. Your body is extremely malnourished. And I mean to the point that if you were anyone else, you would be knocking on death's door right now. What exactly have you been doing to yourself? Ayakoro growled as she jabbed him in the chest multiple times as if to drive her point home. Try finding any decent food at the bottom of the endless chasm while every bone in your body was smashed to pieces from the fall. Also, did I mention that the person who pushed me down is standing right behind you? He gestured over to the rapidly paling Jiraiya, who had taken a step back when the doctor faced him with a twitching eyebrow. Now I must have misheard poor Naruto-kun here. The fatigue must be getting to me because I'm pretty sure I heard him say that Jiraiya-san pushed him into the endless chasm. Which is something he failed to point out when he had brought your unconscious form to me after the invasion, right, Jiraiya-san? Well, you see, there was an invasion going on, and now what I meant to say is sorry. Jiraiya turned to flee the scene as he made a dash to the door. Unfortunately, he failed to see the cat-masked ANBU position her leg in such a manner that caused him to trip and smash face first into the door, leaving him vulnerable to the fury of the female doctor. His screams of pain and mercy could be heard throughout the hospital as he was kicked in the nuts multiple times before she proceeded to stomp on his whimpering form, all the while berating him for his actions. Calming down somewhat after having vented her anger, Ayakoro brushed a few stray locks of hair back into place before flipping through the report again. Taking note of several pages, she scribbled down her own thoughts before placing the report back in place. Well, other than the malnutrition, your body seems to be recovering at its usual enhanced pace. You should be back to 100% by tomorrow, though based on what I can see you are cleared to be discharged as of this instant. Just make sure you don't get into another fight or any form of physical training until tomorrow," Ayakoro declared before turning around and marching out the room. Duty calls after all. Before anything else could happen, the whimpering lump on the ground leapt back up to his feet as if he had not even been hit. Dusting off his clothes, Jiraiya turned to face the frowning blonde and knelt down and pressed his forehead to the ground. Both Naruto and the ANBU felt their eyes widen in shock, not expecting the legendary Sannin to do something like this. "Naruto, I fucked up. I really fucked up. I know that. You know that, but I will do anything within my power to make it up to you. Even if I have to spend the remaining time in my life, I promise that I will make it right. Get off the ground." "Does that mean?" "No, and I'm not sure if I will ever forgive you. However, pointlessly hating you over something that had already occurred is stupid, plus you are a Sannin and I would be a fool to turn down your offer," Naruto stated calmly, though his tone was cold enough to freeze even oxygen. "I guess that is a start," Jiraiya said with an uncomfortable laugh, which slowly died off when he realized the only other two occupants of the room were silently staring at him. "I already have the first thing you can do in mind," Naruto said with dark chuckle, the smirk on his face doing nothing to appease the white-haired Sannin's fears. "I feel like I'm going to regret this." Jiraiya felt a shiver race up his spine. An hour later. The imposing figure of the Toad Sage of Konoha made for a strange sight, pale-faced with rivers of tears flowing down it. His body slumped onto the table, a rather disturbing aura of depression surrounding the man. "I knew I would regret it." His godson was currently seated opposite him at the table, upon which was a wide spread of many different kinds of dishes. Foods ranging from rice to noodles, meat to vegetables, seafood from the most mundane to those truly exotic. Naruto had literally ordered one of everything from the restaurant's menu, claiming that Jiraiya would be the one covering the payment. After all, it was only fair that the person who had been responsible for his malnutrition be the person that picked up the tab for his food. Just for the kicks, the blonde had even invited the purple-haired ANBU along. Naturally she accepted, though she had removed her mask beforehand and told them to address her by her name. Yuzuki Yugao, foremost expert kenjutsu user in Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto had been ecstatic to hear that, immediately begging for her to teach him in the ways of kenjutsu. He had even pulled out his katana in hopes of convincing her to take him on as her student, something that she had never before even considered. Though she had admitted that his weapon had excellent craftsmanship and was well maintained, she eventually caved to his relentless enthusiasm and stated that she would take him on as a part-time student during her free time. "Ano, do you think you could teach me as well, Yuzuki-san?" That voice belonged to Hyuga Hanabi, whom Naruto had also invited along when they had run across her and her bodyguards whilst on the way towards the restaurant. The guards had been hesitant at first but had eventually relented, since Jiraiya of the Sannin would be more than enough to deter any attempts at kidnapping or assassinations. It turned out that the young Hyuga had been on her way home from visiting her sister in the hospital. She had been injured in another ambush attack that had been thwarted by her teammates. What the blonde-haired Uzumaki did not know was that while Hanabi had indeed visited her sister in the hospital, the initial reason for the trip to the hospital was instead to visit him. Unfortunately, they had been turned away by the ANBU stationed at the door, claiming that he was under orders from Jiraiya of the Sannin to not let anyone enter the room unless it was Ayakoro. Hanabi was rather annoyed by the fact that she could not visit her savior but knew that she was outranked, so she settled for pouting and stomping off. Upon awakening from her own bout of unconsciousness from the ambush attack by the Otogekyo shinobi, she had time to process and let sink in the fact that she had almost been kidnapped or killed. And the only reason that she was still alive was because of a certain blonde-haired shinobi. This seemed to leave quite a lasting impression in her young mind, thus leading to her wanting to find out more about her savior, which was the reason why she had jumped at the opportunity to have lunch with him. "Aren't you a Hyuga? Why would you want to learn the art of kenjutsu?" Yugao seemed genuinely confused by the question. "I realized that over-specializing could get a person killed on the battlefield. The invasion only proved to drive that point home. If I want to get stronger, I can't limit myself to just my clan techniques." Hanabi responded confidently, earning herself looks of approval from everyone else at the table. "Couldn't have said it better myself, except without the clan techniques part," Naruto agreed even as he continued devouring the food on the table. "Being the teacher of the first ever Hyuga kenjutsu user. I like it," Yugao stated with a smile. "Sorry to burst your bubble, but kenjutsu training will have to wait a while. There is a reason I want it to be notified immediately upon your awakening after all." Jiraiya cut into the conversation, his tone marking that this was a serious conversation. "I had requested for Naruto to accompany me on an A-ranked mission." Naruto paused in the middle of his eating spree, swallowed the food that was in his mouth and turned to look at the white-haired man. You have my attention. The Shinobi Council had decided that since I had turned down the offer to be Hokage, there were only 3 other possible choices. Hatake Kakashi, though many feel that he lacks the proper resolve and strength. Shimura Danzo, he is known as the Yami no Shinobi, Dark of Shinobi, and ruthless in his methods. Finally, the person that I had suggested, Senju Tsunade of the legendary Sannin and my ex-teammate. Jiraiya listed off the choices, though everyone at the table seemed to agree on who was the most suitable. Tsunade-sama seems to be the most logical choice. With her background as the last remaining Senju, her chakra-enhanced super strength and medical expertise. Yugao voiced out, earning nods of approval from the other 2. Now here comes the tough part, Jiraiya sighed as he leaned back in his chair. Tsunade had left the village many years ago, ever since both her lover as well as her little brother had been killed during the war. The only reason that she had yet to be labeled a missing nin is because of her traveling rights as a Sannin, plus the fact that Sarutobi-sensei could not find the heart to list her down in the bingo books. So I guess this is the part where the A-ranked mission comes into play. You want me to accompany you in searching for Tsunade and convince her to come back to Konoha to serve as its Hokage? Naruto asked, hitting the nail on the head. That's the plan on paper. Off record, I'm using the time we have traveling to teach you a powerful move. Plus I've decided to come clean with you about everything. Jiraiya held up his hand before the blonde could get a word in, his eyes darting around before lowering his voice. In our line of work, the walls always have eyes and ears. I understand. When do we leave? As soon as possible. Tsunade changes her location frequently and my current information will only be reliable for a few more days. In that case, I will be packed and ready by 1500 hours at Konoha's main gate. Fine with me. Turning to face the other 2 occupants of the table, Naruto smiled sheepishly at them. I apologize for asking both of you out only to leave so soon. It's quite alright, Naruto. I have to report back to ANBU headquarters anyway since my protection detail over you is over. Yugao waved off his concern with a smile. And I have to return back to my clan compound before Tusan starts tearing up Konoha to search for me. But you will have to show me the super awesome jutsu you learnt when you come back, alright? Hanabi demanded, though it was in a light-hearted manner. Of course, Hanabi-chan, I'll drop by your home when I'm back, Naruto said, earning himself a cute blush from the younger girl at the affectionate suffix he had attached to her name. Jiraiya restrained himself from making one of his patented perverted comments, realizing that his relationship with his godson was already on thin ice as it was. Yugao, on the other hand, could not help but giggle quietly at how adorable the scene was. Fortunately, it went unnoticed by the 2. Yuzuki-san, I hope to start off my kenjutsu training as well when I get back. If that is okay with you? Naruto asked politely. Look me up when you get back. If I'm free, then we can begin your training. Oh, and since you will be learning under me, feel free to address me as Yugao-sensei from now on. Understood. Well, I guess I'll see you both when I get back. I hope you enjoyed the meal, Naruto said as he stood up, looking over at the 2 females. Yes, it was delicious. I would not mind coming back here again, Yugao replied. Same here, Hanabi said with a grin. Maybe sometime in the future then. Yugao-sensei, could you do me the favor of escorting Hanabi-chan home? Naruto asked the veteran ANBU member as the trio made their way out of the restaurant. Yar. Isn't it usually the male's duty to escort his date home? Yugao joked, earning a pair of blushes from the 2 preteens. It wasn't a date. Plus she's like 10 years old. Naruto could feel his face burning as he tried to defend himself, though his words only served to earn him a kick in the shin from an equally red-faced Hanabi. Itai. Bibaka, she shouted before turning around with a huff, arms crossed over her budding chest. What did I do? Oh, Naruto, maybe you'll understand when you're older. Come now, Hanabi, let's get you home, Yugao said with a chuckle, grabbing the young Hyuga by the hand and leading her down the street. Troublesome, the blonde muttered before taking to the rooftops, making his way back to his home. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, a certain white-haired super pervert was still seated at the table with a twitching eyebrow. I can't believe they forgot about me. Sir, your bill. A waiter approached and handed over a long piece of paper. 10,000 ryo? Asterisk. An hour later. 1,500 hours. Kanahagakure main gate. The blonde-haired force user was honestly surprised to see that the legendary Sannin was already waiting for him at the gate, though it was probably due to his extended period of exposure to Kakashi's perpetual tardiness that affected his perception of his superiors. Ignoring the man's overly enthusiastic wave, Naruto came to a halt directly in front of him. So where do we begin our search for Tsunade? My spy network has informed me that our elusive slug princess was recently spotted checking into an inn at Tanzakagai, a town famous for both its gambling scene as well as fine women, Jiraiya stated with a pronounced blush on his face. TSK, you better not slack off when we're there, plus you better follow through with your promise of teaching me a powerful technique, Naruto said as he walked out the gate, heading in the general direction of Tanzakagai. The white-haired Sannin merely grunted an affirmative in response as he handed over the mission papers to the Chunin guarding the gate, sealing them away once they had authenticated their A-ranked mission. Sensing his estranged godson's impatience, the man quickly took the lead and dashed into the treetops with the blonde following barely a second later. Their journey through the forest was filled with a tense silence, one not wanting to socialize and the other not knowing what to say that would not trigger the other's ire. Finally, having had enough of the atmosphere, Jiraiya decided on one topic that would definitely interest his companion. The technique that I wanted to teach you. Yes? It was a jutsu invented by the Yondaime Hokage, known as the Rasengan. Hearing that actually prompted a response from the usually cold genin, he blinked rapidly as if he had misheard what the older male had said. Turning to face the man while still maintaining an awareness of his footing, he could not help but seek confirmation. A jutsu invented by the Yondaime himself? Hi, it is an A-rank technique utilizing just pure chakra manipulation. The best part is, Minato never finished the Rasengan. He had confided in me that he had planned to learn how to add his elemental chakra into the attack, something I felt would have boosted the ranking of the Rasengan into S-ranked status. Jiraiya smirked when he saw the excited grin stretch across his godson's face. An A-rank technique with the potential to rise to S-ranked? This is my kind of technique. Naruto cheered mentally. Jiraiya released a sigh of relief when he noted how the tense atmosphere had disappeared with the blonde nearly exuding an aura of anticipation. It seemed that the path to forgiveness would be paved with powerful techniques. 1,900 hours. After several hours of non-stop traveling, only punctuated by the occasional hydration breaks, the duo came to a stop in a small secluded clearing in the middle of the forest. Having informed Jiraiya about his sensor abilities, though leaving out that they were not exactly chakra-based, Naruto spread out his force awareness into the surrounding trees and beyond. We're clear. The only living things within several clicks are the local wildlife. Just to be on the safe side, I will set up a perimeter using my shadow clones so that the memory feedback will notify me of any intruders, Naruto stated as he pressed his fingers together in a hand seal and spawned a dozen clones, each of them taking off in a separate direction. Aren't you glad I informed you about the shadow clone's special attribute? Jiraiya teased as he started setting up camp, unsealing the supplies he had brought along. I am grateful, though it also served to increase my ire with a certain perverted cyclops. I can't believe he had been teaching me for several months yet failed to inform me about this important fact, knowing how often I used the technique. Naruto growled as he, along with a pair of clones, gathered wood for the fire. The Sannin could offer no response, instead choosing to mentally prepare himself about how to spill the beans towards his godson. With the aid of the shadow clones, their campsite was up in a matter of minutes. Jiraiya was surprised when the blonde disappeared for a few minutes, only to return with an armful of fish that he had caught in a nearby river. Though claiming that he had learned how to fish during his mission in Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, he had actually caught the fish using some precise force control to persuade the simple-minded creatures to swim up to him. After gutting and cleaning the fish, they left them speared on sharpened sticks to roast over the campfire. Jiraiya decided that this was as good a time as any. He gestured for the younger male to sit across the campfire from him. Remember when I told you that there will be no more secrets between us? Yeah. I will simply start with the biggest. There is no easy way to phrase this, so I will as blunt as possible. I am your godfather, and I know who your parents are. Jiraiya paused here, expecting an enraged reaction, but was surprised to see the blonde still sitting calmly in the same spot. I expected a bigger reaction or any reaction. What did you expect me to say? In all honesty, I already suspected that Sandaime knew who my parents were but refused to tell me for some reason. So I expect that you had also withheld this information on purpose for that same reason, though I do not know if that reason has any merit yet. You don't hate me for not looking after you? Jiraiya asked in a straightforward manner, showing that he meant what he said about being blunt and thus prompting a sigh from the blonde Jinchuriki. Did you expect me to shout and throw a tantrum? I admit that would have been my response if this had happened before you tossed me to my death, but that experience helped me grow in more ways than one. What has been done cannot be taken back. Your excuses, good or bad, are of no matter to me. The guilt of your actions will just be another stone for you to carry, just like the guilt you felt when you killed me. Jiraiya could not help but wince at the way Naruto had phrased his response. He certainly wished that the blonde had instead blown up at him and accused him of shirking his duties. He was prepared to handle an explosive outburst. He was not prepared for the cold, calculated response that had torn into him at an emotional level. I can only apologize and hope that my actions from this point onward would allow you to forgive me. We'll see. You can begin by carrying on from where you had stopped. Who are my parents? Naruto wasted no time and dove headfirst into the question, his posture rigid in suspense. Your father was Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage. Reeling back in shock, Naruto instinctively palmed the area of his robes that covered the ceiling array on his abdomen. Clenching his hand into a fist, he gazed into the flames and his next question was barely a whisper. And my mother? Uzumaki Kushina. She was the previous host of the Kyubi no Yoko, just like you are now. The second major revelation of the night struck him like a blow to the head. His mother had been a Jinchuriki just like him. Immediately 1,000 questions filled his head, everything from how she had become a Jinchuriki to how the villagers of Konohagakure had treated her. With all these questions, he decided to turn inward to find the answers needed. You never told me that my mother was your previous host. We are not exactly on the best of terms. I did not see any reason to inform you about it. You also knew about the Yondaime? Of course, that bastard father of yours is the reason I am sealed in you after all. What else do you know about my parents? What I do or do not know, I see no reason to impart such knowledge to you. Unless you would like to barter my freedom in exchange for it? Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he turned his gaze back to the only other source of information available. Since Kyubi is not forthcoming with the details, why me? Why did my own father choose to curse his own son with such a life? Naruto asked, his hand clenched over his navel. Your father was an excellent shinobi and a fantastic Hokage. He would not ask someone else to do what he could not do himself. A Biju as powerful as the Kyubi could only be sealed into a newborn baby lest they risked the potent chakra destroying the host chakra network, so he chose you, in hopes that the village would treat you as the hero he thought you would be. Jiraiya paused as he could see the blonde gritting his teeth in anger. An excellent shinobi and Hokage he might be, but he was a fool of a father if he believed that the villagers would see me as anything but the scapegoat they saw me as. Minato was an idealistic man. Something that I had passed on to him when I took him on as my apprentice. He always wanted to see the good in people. It did not help that Kushina's status as a Jinchuriki was never revealed to the public, thus he had no idea how the populace would react. The Kyubi just leveled half the village and massacred thousands of people in one night. How else would they react when told that the object of their hatred was sealed into a defenseless child? Naruto yelled as his gaze snapped upwards, his eyes bleeding into a sulfuric yellow for a second before reverting back to a glacial blue. Jiraiya blinked a few times in confusion, before attributing it to the flames of the campfire playing tricks on him. Your father's actions are his own to defend, however I will say that had I been in his place, I would have probably done the same thing. As Hokage, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Naruto took a deep breath and exhaled, allowing the pent-up rage to bleed out before he succumbed to the powerful allure of the dark side of the Force. His rational side of the mind telling him that what his father did was right, this was countered by his emotional side and heart telling him that family came before everything else. My mother, did she agree with me being made a Jinchuriki? I can't say for sure, but from what I know of Kushina, she probably fought your father every step of the way. That woman loved you more than anything else in the world. Do you have a picture of her? Jiraiya silently reached into the folds of his clothes and retrieved a tattered rectangular piece of paper. Naruto gently grasped it and brought it up to his face. He allowed his gaze to linger on the smiling visage of the Yondaime for a few seconds before moving to the other figure in the photograph. Instantly his breath caught in his throat. Ka-san. Uzumaki Kushina was a kunoichi that was well known for her beauty. That was a fact that shone through even when dressed in a housewife's attire and several months pregnant. With her signature fiery red hair, violet eyes and pale skin, Naruto could tell that his mother was definitely a looker. Despite all those things, it was something else entirely that caught his eye. The fact that she had both hands pressed against the bulge on her stomach, plus the soft smile she had on her face that seemed to convey all the love and happiness that she felt. Tracing a finger along her image, he felt a distant echo within his mind. Like a memory long forgotten that had suddenly re-emerged. Naruto, you're going to experience a lot of pain and suffering. Remember who you are. Find a goal, a dream, and don't stop trying until it comes true. There's so much more that I want to say to teach you. I want to stay with you. I love you. Like the start of a light summer's rain, the blonde felt the tears flow down his face and splash onto the photograph that he had grasped with both hands. His frame shook as he wept silently into the night, Jiraiya having retreated into his tent to grant him some form of privacy. Something that the blonde did not notice, his mind having deduced that those words were his mother's parting gift before she passed. And so as the moon traveled across the sky, a boy wept for the loss of a mother that he had never known. A father may turn his back on his child, brothers and sisters may become inveterate enemies, husbands may desert their wives, wives may desert their husbands. However, a mother's love endures through all. Next day. 0700 HRS. Jiraiya bit back a yawn as he emerged from the entrance of his tent, taking the time to stretch out his limbs at a leisurely pace, and was rewarded with several satisfying popping sounds. Moving over to peek into his godson's tent, his eyes widened in surprise when he saw that the sleeping bag was empty but had clearly been in use. Which means that he had woken up at an earlier hour. The man stilled his thoughts and absorbed a small amount of nature chakra into his system, enough for him to gain the abilities of an average skilled sensor. He did not have to spread his senses far as he immediately picked up on the familiar chakra signature barely a few meters away from the campsite. The strange thing was that the signature was high up in the trees. Dispersing the minute amount of nature chakra, Jiraiya moved at a sedate pace in the direction of his godson. Upon reaching the location, he looked skywards to see that the blonde was seated on the branch of the tallest tree in the area. I always enjoyed watching the sunrise from atop the heads of the Hokage monument, especially the Yandame's. Naruto let out a mirthless chuckle, eyes still directed towards the rising sun despite addressing the white-haired man below him. Who knew that he would turn out to be my father? Several seconds of silence passed between the two, either of them knowing what to say in this situation. Couple more seconds passed before Naruto let out a small sigh, pushing off the branch and landed in a crouch before his traveling companion revealed to be godfather. I will make this clear right now. I do not appreciate that this information had been kept from me. Once again, I do not care about the reasons that you or Sarutobi had. I was alone and hated for the entirety of my childhood, without even the comfort of knowing whether my parents had loved me or despised me like the majority of the villagers. Naruto spoke harshly before closing his eyes and continuing in a softer tone. However, I do appreciate that you decided to come clean before I had figured it out for myself. Also, rest assured that I would not allow something like this to affect the dynamics of our relationship during this mission. I see that you have given it some thought. How do you feel about your parents now? Jiraiya asked carefully, knowing that this could still be an active minefield he was treading on. Namikaze Minato. I cannot fault him for his actions, as that is probably what any Kage would have done should the situation had been thrust upon them so suddenly. However, I still cannot find it in my heart to forgive him for condemning his son to such a life. It may seem immature of me, but that is how I feel. I see. In your mother? Ka-san, for some reason, I managed to recollect a memory from my birth when I came in contact with the photo of my mother. Her last parting words to me, I could feel all the love and regret she had at that moment. There was no way I could find it in myself to hate her after experiencing that. I just wish I could have just met her once. If you would let me, I could share with you stories of Uzumaki Kushina and what kind of person she was. Probably when we have some free time after the mission, you could seek me out in Konoha. Jiraiya offered. I would appreciate that, thanks. No problem, but on to a more serious note. There is something else that I need to inform you about an organization of S-ranked missing nin from various hidden villages that seek to hunt down the Jinchuriki and extract their biju. I have not figured out what their purpose is yet, but I do know that each of their 10 members are at least S-ranked at minimum. This organization is known as Akatsuki. Red Dawn, do you know the names of the members? My spies have confirmed that Orochimaru had at one point in time been a member of Akatsuki. He left the organization after an unknown falling out with them. The only other confirmed member I have is another infamous Konoha missing nin, Uchiha Itachi. The man who single-handedly slaughtered his clan, leaving only his younger brother alive. Damn, these guys are serious business. Looks like I need to up my training if I hope to even stand a chance against them. Naruto smirked as he conversed mentally with his tenant. Hey Kyubi, you heard that right? Grr. More stupid ninja trying to enslave us for our power. This never changes despite the times. Whatever they plan to do, I'm sure it won't be remotely even pleasant for the biju. Your point? I would like to request your aid when it comes to handling these people. I know that I am still way out of their league at the moment. Fine. Only because their plans will probably be a lot worse than this. Thanks, Kyubi. Humph. I'll begin your training once we reach the next town. I have to pick up some supplies and check with my spy network if there has been any changes in Tsunade's plans," Jiraiya stated as he made his way back towards the campsite, needing to seal everything back up again. "Understood." Naruto made to follow him but paused mid-stride when he felt an abnormal disturbance in his force senses. He snapped his neck around but found nothing but trees in his vision. Weird, could have sworn I felt a strange presence. After a few more cautionary glances at the surrounding foliage, the blonde chalked it up to his force senses, probably picking up a stray forest animal that had gotten curious. Letting out a quiet sigh, he turned back around and broke into a fast jog to catch up with his white-haired traveling companion. Further into the woods, the bark of a tall oak tree began to distort in a strange manner. The surface rippling like it was made of water, and a large enclosed plant-like object emerged from it, highly resembling a closed Venus flytrap. The jaws of the plant split open to reveal another strange sight, a male head that was divided vertically down the middle with dual skin pigmentations. The left side of the face seemed to be almost normal with the exception of having a white skin pigment. The right side held no facial features except a singular yellow eye on its pitch-black skin. To top it all off was a patch of short, messy green hair that covered the head. That was close. Yeah. How did he sense us anyway? We're like the best. I don't know, we'll have to report to Toby about this. But I'm hungry. The plant-like being held a conversation with itself, its voice differentiated by a lighter and deeper tone. Just as it had appeared, the creature withdrew back into trunk of the tree, and in a few seconds there was no evidence of it having ever been there. 0900 HRS. Small village between Konoha and Tanzakagai. Naruto could feel his brow twitching in annoyance as he stood in the middle of a small shinobi clothing store in the village. He mentally cursed the white-haired Sannin for dumping him here and taking off. The man had claimed that his current outfit was not fit for close-quarters combat. The baggy nature of the clothing allowed too many opportunities for an opponent to grab hold of. Thus Jiraiya had handed him some money, a slip of paper with the address of their hotel, and pushed him into the shop before disappearing. "Hello, can I help you?" Naruto was broken out of his thoughts by the voice, which belonged to a young woman in her early 20s. She had long black hair, with the side bangs dyed an electric blue, sharp hazel eyes, a small nose and a smile on her light pink lips. "I'm sorry, got lost in my thoughts for a moment. On a recommendation from my traveling companion, he insisted I acquire a more combat-orientated attire that was more form-fitting than my current one. Would you happen to have such a thing?" he asked politely. "We most certainly do. My name is Yukimi, this way, sir." "Naruto, I appreciate the help." Following the bubbly female, he was soon surrounded by racks upon racks of differing shinobi attires. From the most basic clothing to several exotic styles that he assumed came from the other hidden villages, there certainly was a wide variety to choose from. Scratching the back of his head sheepishly, the blonde turned towards the store owner for help. "I'm kind of new to this whole shopping thing. Anything you would recommend?" He almost regretted his decision when he saw a devious glint enter her eyes. "Well, what exactly are you looking for?" Taking a moment to think about it, "I would like it to be form-fitting as I mentioned earlier, to prevent opponents from getting a good grip. Dark in color, or at least something that would be easy to camouflage with and resistant to damage if possible." Immediately the woman started darting around and rummaging in different places, withdrawing multiple articles of clothing from each place before finally dumping the entire pile into his outstretched arms. Ignoring the incredulous look that he was sending her, Yukimi proceeded to usher him into a changing room and demanded that he try the different outfits she had gotten him. Sighing in resignation, he stripped quickly and changed into the first outfit and stepped out of the changing room. "Too tacky." "Ugh. Not bad, doesn't suit you though." "Gross, that just screams in my face." Perfect." Offering a silent prayer of thanks to whichever kami had heard his pleas, the blonde turned around to admire his outfit in the mirror. Despite all the hassle he had to go through, he had to admit that the woman had a sense of style. He was now wearing a black, long-sleeved turtleneck that clung to his physique and a pair of dark gray slim-fit pants. The top had a vest of hardened leather sewn into it, gray in color and offering slight protection against thrown projectiles such as shuriken. The pants were tucked into a pair of black combat boots with thinner-than-average soles, easier for the channeling of chakra for tasks such as tree climbing or water walking. Sealing up his old clothes, he picked up his headband and retied it around his left arm. Taking a cursory walk around the shop, he picked up several other items that he felt would benefit him in the long run. Those being a face mask like the one Kakashi always wore, a pair of metal-plated fingerless gloves and a dark gray hooded cloak. In addition, he also requested for 3 more sets of his new outfit, plus a set of clothes for casual wear. The total will be 6,750 ryo. Handing over a portion of the stack of notes that Jiraiya had passed to him, Naruto sealed up his purchases and left the shop with Yukimi waving goodbye enthusiastically. Glancing up to note the position of the sun in the sky, the blonde decided to make his way to the hotel so that he could check in for both himself as well as the pervert. Moving down the crowded streets of the bustling village, he allowed his senses to flow through the area around him. He noted once again how the forced presences of civilians were much smaller than even an academy student that had unlocked their chakra. It was like comparing an ant to a small animal. As his awareness spread further across the village, his eyes suddenly widened in alarm when it picked up on two insanely strong presents, with one of the pair easily dwarfing the other, standing out like the sun next to a campfire. I've long since memorized Jiraiya's presence in the force. Either of those two match his signature. They can't possibly be his contacts. They stand out way too much to be a spy within a small village like this based on the path they are taking. It seems that they are moving in my general direction. Naruto outwardly portrayed none of his thoughts, casually moving into an alleyway to create a single shadow clone. You know what to do. Snapping off a quick nod of confirmation, the clone leapt onto the rooftop of the nearest building, while the original stepped out of the alleyway and back into the crowded street. Deliberately taking his time, he browsed through the wares of several street-side stalls until he felt the familiar tug in the back of his mind before a stream of memories entered. His clone had been created with the least amount of chakra possible, having figured that at least one of the pair had to be a tracker of some sort. The memories showed that the clone had utilized the transformation technique to masquerade as a Chunin shinobi from Takigakure no Sato, Hidden Waterfall Village. He had pretended to be lost and struck up a conversation with a local merchant. Within a matter of seconds, the presences were revealed to be two individuals wearing black full-bodied cloaks that were adorned with red clouds. Unfortunately, their faces were obscured with wide straw hats that were tilted downwards, casting a shadow over any features that might have been exposed. Black with red clouds. Akatsuki. How did they find us? Though something to do with that presence I felt in the forest. Naruto rationalized, his mind working to piece a plan together. Ignoring the stares of curiosity as he formed a pair of shadow clones as he walked, he mentally issued commands for one of them to check into the hotel and the other to search for Jiraiya. Based on what he knew from Jiraiya, the Akatsuki were composed entirely out of S-ranked missing nin from various villages. They were likely not to hesitate to attack him even if it were to cause civilian casualties, something that he would like to avoid if possible. Unfortunately, I do not know the layout of this village. Next best thing then. He reached out with the force again, this time in search of an area with the least amount of people. Locking on to the target destination in mind, the blonde moved in that direction without breaking his original pace so as to not alert his pursuers. Soon enough, the crowd started thinning out as he found himself leaving the shopping district of the village, and the shop houses were replaced by a sprawling field of greenery and trees. Taking a look around, he realized that he had chosen the local park as his confrontation grounds. Quickly spawning several shadow clones, he had them escort the few civilians away before transforming and taking over their place. Several minutes later, and the two cloaked Akatsuki members stepped onto the grassy fields of the park grounds, their target sitting in the center of the field in a meditative position. Oh, what do you know? He didn't run away after all, the taller figure stated in amusement. Naruto-kun, would you kindly follow us? The shorter of the two spoke, his voice emotionless and monotone. Opening both his eyes, the blonde Jinchuriki saw that the pair had their hats pushed back to reveal their faces. The taller figure had small, round, white eyes, gill-like facial markings under those eyes and sharp triangular teeth. Those traits, along with his bluish-gray skin tone and blue hair styled in the manner of a fin, gave the man a distinctive shark-like appearance. Strapped across his back was a large bandaged weapon, its handle sticking out the end over his shoulder. The shorter male had jet black hair that was pulled back in a low ponytail, and his chin-length, center-parted bangs framed his face. Under his eyes were long, pronounced tear troughs. Overall, there was nothing extraordinary about his appearance, which changed when the man opened his eyes to reveal a pair of fully matured Sharingan with 3 tomo. The presence of those eyes, plus the man's resemblance to a certain black-haired teammate of his, was all he needed to discern the identity of this mysterious male. Uchiha Itachi S-ranked missing nin of Konohagakure no Sato. What does someone like you want with me? Naruto replied calmly, though he was breaking out in cold sweat on the inside. Oh, you're pretty famous, Itachi? The shark-like man mused as he moved a hand to grasp onto the protruding handle on his back. Kisame, please stay out of this. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki was entrusted to me after all, Itachi said with a glance at his partner, eyes narrowed and Sharingan spinning. Oh, scary, guess I'll sit this one out then. He doesn't look that strong anyway. As I was saying, could you please come with us, Naruto-kun? Our leader has something that he requires of you. Standing up, Naruto brushed the dirt off his clothes before turning to address the raven-haired Akatsuki member. Nope. No? I believe that I did not make myself clear before. You can either come with us willingly or unconscious. How about option C, none of the above? Right as he spoke those words, the blonde dropped a couple of smoke pellets that erupted a thick gray fog that covered a large portion of the surrounding area. Using the smokescreen as cover, he issued a mental command to his disguised clones and a hail of kunai rained down upon the area. Pressing his fingers together in a hand seal, he flared his chakra and triggered the dozens of exploding tags that were attached to each handle of the kunai. A thunderous explosion filled the air as the earth rumbled from the power of the explosion. Naruto smirked to himself as his hair swayed in the breeze generated from the blast. Unfortunately, that smirk fell off his face when the smoke cleared to reveal a charred and destroyed landscape but no bodies, not even a stray scrap of destroyed clothing. Did you really think we were going to stand inside a smokescreen and wait? Nice attempt, though. Naruto turned around to see that Kisame, who had spoken, was situated on the branch of a tree while Itachi was standing at the base, either of them looking even remotely fazed. The raven-haired male took a single step forward before disappearing in a burst of speed. Naruto barely got his guard up in time as a fist slammed into his cross-armed guard. Itachi did not grant him a breather, as he immediately engaged him in a furious flurry of strikes, a mixture of punches and kicks designed to throw off the opponent. Fortunately, that effect was negated through the use of the force, allowing the blonde to predict and intercept each and every blow that came his way. If the man was surprised by it, he did not allow it to show on his face as he disengaged with a powerful jab that sent Naruto skidding backwards from the force. Flickering through several hand seals, the Uchiha took a deep breath. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu, Fire Release, Phoenix Sage Flower Technique. It was a testament to the gap between Sasuke and his older brother when the fireballs exhaled were both larger in both size and quantity, the projectiles arcing through the air as they homed in on the fleeing Jinchuriki. With every single iota of his force-enhanced agility, the blonde evaded fireball after fireball to the point where he realized that the remaining ones were flying towards him from every direction at once. Left with almost no time, he immersed himself into the force and released a powerful shockwave around him that snuffed out his opponent's attack completely. Itachi allowed his eyebrows to raise slightly in surprise at what his target had just done, an invisible shockwave of energy that highly resembled an attack that the leader of Akatsuki could perform. The surprise factor being that the boy showed no signs of having the dijutsu that the leader possessed, something that was required to even attempt that technique in the first place. Thus prompting the question on how young Naruto-kun could perform that technique, or if it was an entirely new technique altogether? Itachi mused as he reached into his weapon's pouch and unleashed a barrage of shuriken at his target. He watched as the blonde cursed lightly before drawing his katana to deflect the spinning projectiles. Does that mean this technique has an interval between uses like Pain does? Naruto called upon the disguised shadow clones that had hid after the initial bombardment. He had them engage Itachi as he attempted to conjure up a plan that could buy more time. Itachi scoffed as he created a singular shadow clone, which then proceeded to demolish every other clone on the battlefield with a series of well-placed kunai strikes. After dealing with the last clone, the copy of Itachi dashed towards the original target with kunai poised to strike. Naruto moved to intercept the strike. He could see the clone's lips moving just as their blades were about to clash. Bunshin Daibakuha, Clone Great Explosion. The resulting explosion was strong enough to launch him several feet into the air and tumbling backwards when he hit the ground again, his clothes and skin singed in multiple places. He was thankful that the Kyuubi was already working on repairing the damage caused by the surprise attack, though it did not make it hurt any less. Any ideas, Fox? I'll supply you with some of my chakra, only because I'd rather you not lose to a disgusting Uchiha. Thanks. Naruto relished in the familiar burning sensation of the potent chakra as it raced throughout his system. He could feel the gentle soothing nature of the force entangle with the raging emotions generated by the Kyuubi's chakra. This had the benefit of him being able to fight with a clear mind despite being under the influence of the potent chakra, something that he greatly appreciated. Hey, you got me with that trick. Time for round 2. He burst forward in a straight dash, fist cocked back in preparation. As he closed in on the stoic Uchiha, he unleashed a devastating haymaker towards the left cranium. As expected, Itachi merely predicted his actions with his Sharingan and applied to the minimum force required to divert the punch using his palm. This caused the blonde to overextend his attack, leaving him open to a counterattack in the form of a chokehold around his neck. It's over, Naruto-kun, Itachi said as he increased the pressure of his hold, watching as the blonde-haired Jinchuriki gasped for air. Naruto smirked as he pointed both his palms at his captor's abdomen, wisps of force energy dancing around his arms. Surprise fucker! Twin blasts of force energy rippled forth from his palms, careening into the unprepared Uchiha, and launching him clear across the field and into the trees. Naruto stumbled to his feet while rubbing his throat, his eyes watching the rising figure of his opponent. Not many things could surprise the stoic Uchiha known as Itachi, and even if something did, he would never allow it to show on his expression due to having trained himself to suppress his emotions from a young age. It was the same in this scenario, as he merely rose to his feet and calmly wiped the trail of blood that leaked out the corner of his mouth. His partner, on the other hand, had no qualms about expressing his thoughts on the matter at hand. So the brat isn't all talk, it seems. Now I'm tempted to go a few rounds with him too. Kisame chuckled from his position. Before any further moves could be made, a clone of Naruto landed beside the original, and it was shortly followed by the familiar figure of his white-haired companion. Naruto dismissed his clone with a nod of the head, physically holding back a sigh when he absorbed the memories of the clone, and why he had taken so long for Jiraiya to arrive.